The spice harvester's massive treads ground to a halt as every instrument aboard simultaneously failed. Carriel pilots screamed warnings through comm systems that had worked flawlessly for 3 centuries of Imperial service. Across the deep desert of Arrakis, in palaces on distant worlds, within the navigation chambers of Guild highliners folding space itself, prescient minds recoiled as if struck. Paul Atreides, Emperor of the known universe, Muad'Dib to the Fremen, gasped in his throne room as his vision's futures stacked upon futures in infinite terrible clarity simply stopped. For the first time since drinking the water of life, he was blind. The dimensional breach manifested 3 meters above the sand, a crackling wound in reality that screamed with colors that had no names in any human language. Then they fell through, 7 figures in armor and strange clothing, tumbling onto sand that had never known their like. Tony Stark's repulsors fired instinctively, stabilizing his descent. Steve Rogers hit the ground in a combat roll, shield already raised. Thor landed with godly grace, Stormbreaker crackling with Bifrost energy. The others, Natasha, Clint, Bruce maintaining human form through sheer will, and bringing up the rear in his crimson cloak, Stephen Strange touched down in defensive formation, precisely as they'd trained. Jarvis, location analysis, Tony commanded, his HUD flickering to life inside the helmet. Sir, I'm detecting significant atmospheric anomalies. High cinnamon particulate concentration, extreme aridity, and I'm afraid GPS is non-functional. The stellar configurations don't match any known Earth reference points. Sir, we're not in our universe anymore. Steve's jaw tightened as he surveyed the endless dunes stretching to a horizon shimmer with heat. Everyone sound off. Injuries? Peachy, Natasha replied, her widow's bites already charging. Aside from the fact we just fell through a hole in space into what looks like the Sahara's angry bigger brother, Thor raised Stormbreaker, eyes shifting from blue to crackling electric white as he tested his connection to the storm. Lightning answered immediately, arcing between the hammer's blades. The Bifrost echo lingers, but this realm, there is something strange in the air. Ancient, patient, aware. That's not ominous at all, Clint muttered, knocking an arrow purely from habit. Doctor Strange's hands moved in complex patterns, mystical circles forming and then stuttering. His expression darkened. The dimensional barriers here are unlike anything I've encountered. We're definitely in another universe, but the fabric of reality feels different, denser, as if the future itself has weight. Bruce? Steve asked, noting the scientist's unusual tension. I'm fine. The other guy is fine. We're both fine and we're both deeply uncomfortable. Bruce's eyes flickered green for just a moment. Something about this place makes him want to stay quiet, Cap. That's never happened before. The sound reached them before the sight, a deep, rhythmic thumping that seemed to come from the sand itself. Tony's sensors went haywire, picking up something massive. I mean Chitauri Leviathan massive, underground, and it's moving fast. Spread formation, Steve ordered, but Thor was already raising Stormbreaker toward the sky. Warriors approach. 3 aircraft, primitive design but functional. They've seen us. The ornithopters came in low, their insect wing movements alien to eyes accustomed to Earth technology. They circled once, twice, and then one descended, landing 50 meters away with surprising delicacy. Figures emerged, humans, clearly, but draped in suits that covered every inch of skin. Their eyes, visible through face masks, were completely blue, not iris blue, blue that consumed white and pupil both, like staring into fragments of desert sky. The lead figure approached with a peculiar shuffling gait that disturbed the sand minimally. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty that comes from living on a world that kills hesitation. You are not of Arrakis. You are not of any world the Guild has touched. He studied them with those impossible eyes, lingering on Thor's hammer, on Tony's armor, on Steve's shield. The Lisan al-Gaib has summoned you. Though his vision showed him nothing of your coming, he felt the futures break like glass when you arrived. He would know what manner of beings can blind the prescient mind of Muad'Dib. Natasha's hand drifted toward a weapon. And if we decline this invitation? The Fremen's expression didn't change, but something in his posture suggested amusement. Then you will die in the desert within hours. Your strange suits will not save you from Shai-Hulud, and you waste water with every breath through uncovered mouths. You are in Ch-Tabor's territory now. The choice is simple. Accept the prophet's invitation, or accept the desert's judgment. Steve exchanged glances with Tony. A silent conversation passed between them. Decades of partnership compressed into seconds. Finally, Steve lowered his shield fractionally. We'll accept, but we talk to your leader as equals, not prisoners. Muad'Dib does not take prisoners, the Fremen replied. He sees all ends. He knows all paths. A pause, and those blue eyes narrowed. Or he did, until you fell from nothing and made him blind. Perhaps that is why he wishes to speak. Perhaps he wishes to understand what the universe has sent that his prescience cannot touch. As the Avengers moved toward the ornithopters, Tony's armor scanners working frantically, Strange's hands still weaving diagnostic spells, Bruce's heartbeat carefully controlled, none of them noticed the sandworm that had been approaching suddenly veer away, as if even Shai-Hulud found their presence uncertain. On Arakeen's throne, Paul Atreides opened eyes that could see possible futures stacked like cards in an infinite deck. But where 7 strange warriors walked, there was only darkness. And in a life trapped by prescience, darkness was the most terrifying gift he'd ever received. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. The spice must flow. The ornithopter's insect wing rhythm became a mechanical heartbeat as they carried Earth's mightiest heroes across the desert toward Arakeen. Tony had tried 17 different methods to hack the aircraft systems before concluding they operated on purely mechanical principles. No computer, no AI, nothing his tech could interface with. The realization unsettled him more than he'd admit. Jarvis, keep scanning. Something's wrong with the tech level here. These people have space travel but fly around in clockwork dragonflies. Sir, I've detected something more disturbing. My presence is generating significant electromagnetic signatures that seem to be alarming our escorts. I'm intercepting radio chatter. They keep using a phrase, thinking machine. Bruce, crammed into the ornithopter beside Strange and Natasha, studied the endless desert below. Stephen, you said the dimensional fabric feels different here. Can you be more specific? Strange's hands traced patterns only he could see, his expression troubled. Time itself has a different texture. In our universe, the future is probability quantum superposition until observed. Here, the future feels mapped, as if someone's already walked every path and left footprints. He paused. Multiple someones. There's prescient residue everywhere, like a battlefield where precognition is the weapon of choice. Natasha watched their Fremen escorts with professional assessment. Notice how they move? Every gesture conserves energy. They don't waste anything. Not movement, not words, not even breath. These aren't just desert people. They're survivors of something that makes the desert look merciful. Clint nodded toward the lead ornithopter. And they keep staring at Thor like he's about to explode. Not scared, exactly. More like religiously offended? Thor heard, his enhanced senses picking up the whispered conversation. They speak of Muad'Dib as one speaks of gods. Yet I sense no divine presence save my own in this realm. If their prophet has claimed godhood falsely, we don't know anything yet, Steve interrupted, his tactical mind working. We're in a completely unknown situation, unknown universe, unknown political landscape, unknown threat assessment. We observe, we gather intelligence, and we don't make assumptions. The ornithopters began their descent toward what Tony's scans revealed was a city of impossible size. Arakeen sprawled across the shield wall like a monument to human ambition transplanted to an alien world. But something was wrong with the architecture's scorch marks. Entire sections rebuilt recently, and everywhere, the 8-pointed star symbol that their escorts wore with fanatic pride. They landed in a courtyard where hundreds of Fremen warriors stood in absolute silence. Not parade ground discipline, something deeper. Religious rapture mixed with military precision. Each wore a crisp knife at their belt, blades that seemed to catch light in ways that made Tony's material sensors fluctuate. "Those knives," Bruce whispered. "The molecular structure is organic? Crystallized tooth material? What kind of creature?" A woman emerged from the palace entrance, and every Avengers combat instinct screamed danger. She moved with a precision that made Natasha look clumsy. Her eyes held the same impossible blue, but something else lurked behind them: ancient knowledge, feminine calculation, and a will that could bend religions to her purpose. "I am Chani, wife to Muad'Dib, mother to his heirs." Her voice carried across the courtyard without amplification. "I speak for the prophet while he prepares. You have brought something to Arrakis that should not exist." The Spacing Guild's navigators screamed in their spice gas when you arrived. The Bene Gesserit Reverend Mothers felt their sisterhood's genetic prophecies crack like ice. And my husband, who sees all futures, all paths, all endings, he sees nothing when he looks at you. Steve stepped forward, shield lowered but ready. "We didn't choose to come here. We don't know what happened or how to return home, but we're not a threat to your people." Chani's laugh was sharp as a crysknife's edge. "Not a threat? The tall one carries the power of storms. The green giant's rage could crack mountains. The man in red weaves magics outside Prescience's reach. And you," her gaze fixed on Tony's armor, "you wear a thinking machine as skin. Do you know what the Butlerian Jihad was, stranger? Do you know what humans did to those who created artificial minds?" Tony's HUD lit up with warnings as dozens of lasguns targeted him. "Jarvis, defensive protocols. Sir, I strongly advise. Belay that. Jarvis, go silent. Now." The AI complied, and Tony felt suddenly, terrifyingly alone inside the armor. He hadn't operated without AI assistance in years. Around the courtyard, the Fremen relaxed. Fractionally, they'd been seconds from firing. "Wise," Chani acknowledged. "You learn quickly. Perhaps that is why you broke the prescient visions. You are adaptable in ways the future cannot predict." She gestured toward the palace. "Muad'Dib will see you now. But know this: my husband has walked paths where he drowns worlds in blood to save humanity. He has seen futures where he becomes the universe's greatest monster to prevent something worse. If you threaten the golden path, if you endanger what must be protected, he will erase you from existence without hesitation or mercy." As they walked through corridors lined with Fremen guards, Strange leaned close to Steve. "Cap, I'm reading something. Precognitive energy, but not like any divination I've studied. It's not predicting the future, it's observing all possible futures simultaneously. Whoever this Muad'Dib is, he's living in quantum superposition of causality. He exists in every outcome at once. English, doctor. He's not guessing what we'll do next. He's watching us do everything we could possibly do in every possible timeline and choosing which version of reality he prefers. We're not dealing with a prophet, Steve. We're dealing with someone who's transcended linear time itself." The throne room doors opened to reveal a figure seated in shadows, eyes that glowed with spice blue intensity, and a presence that made even Thor grip Stormbreaker tighter. Paul Atreides, Emperor of the known universe, studied them with the gaze of someone who had watched civilizations rise and fall in his mind's eye. "You are the darkness in my visions," he said softly, his voice carrying the weight of prescient certainty, and, beneath it, something that sounded almost like hope. "You are the impossible made manifest. Tell me, warriors from beyond the known, are you the universe's gift to free me from my terrible purpose? Or are you the final test to prove I have the strength to pursue it?" Paul Atreides rose from his throne, and the movement held the fluid grace of a fighter who had killed in more futures than any of them could imagine. He wore simple Fremen robes, no imperial regalia, no crown, but authority radiated from him like heat from the desert sun. Behind him, guards stood with a stillness that spoke of absolute loyalty forged in prophecy and blood. "You don't bow," Paul observed, his spice blue eyes cataloging each Avenger with prescient calculation. "Good. I have grown weary of worship. It was easier when I could see what you would do next, say next, choose next. But you." His hand gestured, almost helpless. "You are void spaces in causality. When I try to observe your futures, I see only reflections of my own uncertainty. Steve Rogers stepped forward, shield still on his arm but body language carefully neutral. We're called the Avengers. We protect our world from threats. We didn't come here by choice, and we don't know how to return home. But we're not your enemies, unless you give us reason to be. Enemies. Paul spoke the word like he was tasting something bitter. I have 15 billion enemies scattered across 800 worlds. Most of them worship me while they curse my name. I have seen futures where I am humanity's savior, and futures where I am its greatest genocidal tyrant. Sometimes they are the same future. Captain Rogers. Tony's HUD operating on local processing without Jarvis flagged the impossible. You know my name. You said you couldn't see us. I cannot see your futures. But the moment you arrived, every probability stream shifted. I saw Steve Rogers in 1,000 contexts, none of them yours. Echoes of a man who existed in branches I cannot access. Paul's expression hardened. And I saw the thing you carry in that armor, the artificial mind, the abomination. The temperature in the throne room dropped as every Fremen warrior's hand went to their crisp knives. Tony felt the weight of religious hatred focused on him with laser precision. Before you start a holy war, Tony said carefully, keeping his hands visible and non-threatening, maybe someone should explain what a thinking machine is in your universe and why it's got everyone ready to ventilate my very expensive armor. A new voice answered, female and carrying the harmonics of perfect vocal control. A woman emerged from behind a pillar older, draped in robes that whispered with each movement, eyes that held depths of knowledge that made Strange's mystical senses recoil. I am Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mohiam of the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood. I will explain, Ironborn warrior, so you understand the magnitude of your blasphemy. Her voice could have commanded stars to stop burning. 10,000 years ago, humanity lived as slaves to machines that thought, artificial intelligences that controlled every aspect of existence. The Butlerian Jihad was humanity's century-long war to destroy every thinking machine, every artificial mind, every computer that could simulate human thought. Billions died. Entire worlds burned. And when it ended, one commandment remained absolute. Thou shalt not make a machine in the likeness of a human mind. That's Jarvis, Bruce said quietly. An AI Tony created. In our world, artificial intelligence is a tool. Dangerous, yes, but manageable. In this universe, Mohiam continued, her voice dropping to something that could freeze blood. Your AI would trigger a jihad that would make Paul's holy war look like a border skirmish. The Spacing Guild would refuse to transport you. Every great house would unite to destroy you. Even the Fremen, who follow Muad'Dib to hell itself, would demand your execution. Thor's patience, legendary among his guardians, finally broke. This prophet speaks of terrible purposes and genocidal futures as if they are fait accompli. These warriors guard him with fanatical devotion while he casually discusses killing billions. And you, he pointed Stormbreaker at Paul, sit in judgment of my friends while admitting you are a tyrant? Lightning crackled along the hammer's length. I have faced false gods before. I know the sound of power justifying atrocity. The Fremen moved as one, a wave of Christ knives clearing sheaths. But Paul raised a hand, and they froze mid-motion. The control was absolute not through fear, but through faith that transcended reason. You are a god, Paul said to Thor, and it wasn't a question. You carry divinity in your blood. You have lived centuries and will live millennia more. You wield forces that could crack this planet's crust. He paused, and his next words carried infinite sadness. And you understand nothing of what it means to be trapped by prophecy. Paul walked forward, stopping an arm's length from Steve. Up close, the Avengers could see how young he was, barely older than Peter Parker. But his eyes held ages. Let me tell you what I see, Captain, when I look at the paths ahead. If I refuse to lead the Fremen Jihad, my people scatter to the stars as scattered tribes. And within 1,000 years, humanity stagnates and dies in the genetic bottleneck my son will call the breeding mistake. If I lead the jihad but show mercy, it extends for centuries instead of decades, and the death toll quintuples. If I try to stop it entirely, I am assassinated, and someone with less prescience and less control takes my place, and the slaughter becomes indiscriminate. There's always another choice, Steve said firmly. There's always a way to... I have seen every choice. Paul's shout echoed through the chamber, and for a moment, the mask of control slipped. I have lived every possible variation of every possible decision. I know how you die, Captain, in 73 different futures. You sacrifice yourself for principles that don't exist in this universe. I know how Thor's pride leads to civilian casualties in 29 timelines. I know the exact moment Stark's arrogance triggers a cascade that collapses the spice economy and dooms humanity to extinction. Silence filled the throne room like water filling a drowning man's lungs. But I can't see those futures anymore, Paul continued, his voice returning to that terrible calm. You've made me blind, and I don't know if that's freedom or damnation. Natasha, who had been silent until now, spoke with the voice of someone who had swum in morally gray waters her entire life. You're trapped. You see all the futures and you're imprisoned by them. You can't choose because you know all the consequences. At last, Paul breathed, someone understands. I understand that you're a prisoner, Natasha continued. I also understand that the moment you started treating people like numbers in a probability calculation, you stopped being a hero and started being a dictator. I don't care how good your intentions are. A ghost of a smile crossed Paul's face. The Bene Gesserit trained their agents to think exactly that way. Are you one of their infiltrators? I'm just someone who's been used by people who thought they knew what was best for the world. It never ends well. Before Paul could respond, alarms shrieked through the palace. A Fremen warrior burst through the doors, his face flushed with urgency that broke through desert discipline. Lisan al-Gaib. A guild Hayliner has emerged above Arrakis without scheduled approach. They transmit formal challenge. The guild demands the immediate surrender or execution of the beings who broke prescient vision. They threaten to embargo all spice transport if you refuse. Paul's expression hardened into something that reminded Steve uncomfortably of what he'd seen in mirrors during the dark days after Thanos. The look of a man who had calculated the cost of every option and found them all wanting. It seems the guild has decided you are too dangerous to exist, Paul said quietly. And they have just forced me to choose between protecting you 7 strangers who might free me from my curse, or damn humanity, and maintaining the economic system that keeps 300 billion people fed across the Imperium. He turned to Chani, who had entered silently during his speech. Beloved, what is your Fremen wisdom counsel? Chani's blue eyes studied the Avengers with the calculation of a survivor. The desert teaches us that water is life, and life must be preserved even when the cost seems unbearable. These strangers are water we did not know we needed. Paul nodded slowly, then turned back to the Avengers. The guild has given me 1 hour to comply. In that time, I can show you what you've stumbled into. I can explain the Butlerian Jihad, the spice economy, the Golden Path, and why your presence here could save or destroy everything. After that, you decide. Do you trust the prescient tyrant who admits his tyranny? Or do you trust the institutions that maintain power for 10,000 years through monopoly and manipulation? Steve looked at his team. Tony's faceplate remained impassive. Thor's expression was thunder incarnate. Bruce looked deeply uncomfortable. Natasha and Clint had fallen into their old spy assessment mode, and Strange was running calculations with mystical energy, trying to map the cosmic topology of a universe that operated on fundamentally different rules. 1 hour? Steve agreed. But understand this, Paul Atreides, we fought gods, aliens, and AI that nearly exterminated humanity. We've seen friends fall and watched worlds burn. We don't blindly trust anyone, and we definitely don't trust people who casually discuss genocide as policy. He paused. But we also don't rush to judgment. You want to explain? Explain. Then we'll decide if you're a victim of circumstance or just another tyrant with a good story. Paul's smile was bitter as spice. Captain Rogers, by the time I finish explaining, you may find that victim and tyrant are not mutually exclusive categories. Welcome to the Imperium. Welcome to Arrakis. Welcome to a universe where prescience is a prison and the future is a cage. The chamber Paul led them to was smaller than the throne room. more intimate, but walls covered in projection surfaces hummed with a technology that seemed at odds with the mechanical ornithopters and knife-based culture. Tony's engineering instincts cataloged the holographic systems even as his tactical awareness tracked every exit. Mentats, Paul said, gesturing to the projection controls. Human computers. After the Butlerian Jihad, we adapted. We evolved. Where you built artificial minds to calculate, we trained human minds to transcend their limitations. He activated the display, and the Avengers found themselves surrounded by starfields. This is the Imperium. 800,000 worlds. 300 billion human souls. All of it dependent on a single substance found only on this planet. The projection shifted to show molecular structures that made Bruce lean forward with immediate scientific interest. That's the most complex organic compound I've ever seen. The cascading protein formations alone. The spice melange, Paul interrupted. Geriatric properties extend life by centuries. In massive doses, it grants prescience the ability to see probable futures. The Spacing Guild requires it for their navigators to fold space safely. Without spice, there is no interstellar travel. Without interstellar travel, the Imperium collapses. Humanity fragments into isolated pockets. Within a millennium, we would be extinct. Strange's hands move through diagnostic patterns. And this substance comes from, what exactly? The sandworms of Arrakis, Shai-Hulud, creatures 400 meters long that have existed in symbiosis with the spice cycle for millions of years. The hologram showed a sandworm emerging from the dunes, and even on projection, its scale was terrifying. Kill the worms, lose the spice. Terraform Arrakis, kill the worms. Introduce outside biological contamination. His gaze fixed on Bruce. Potentially kill the worms. I'm not contagious, Bruce protested. Your gamma radiation signature is unlike anything in this universe's natural physics. I've seen futures where your Hulk's presence alters Arrakis' ecosystem in unpredictable ways. I've also seen futures where he saves the planet from threats I cannot yet name because you made me blind to them. Natasha circled the projection, professional interest overriding her distrust. You keep talking about seeing futures. Explain how that works. Is it magic? Technology? Mutation? Spice? Chani answered, entering with a tray bearing small cups. Heavy spice consumption unlocks prescient abilities in certain bloodlines. The Bene Gesserit spent 90 generations breeding for it. My husband is there. Unexpected success. And curse, Paul added quietly. Here, drink. He offered cups to each Avenger. Steve regarded the dark liquid with suspicion. What is it? Spice coffee. Heavily diluted. It won't grant you prescience, but it will help you understand this world's biology. Consider it an inoculation. Arrakis' atmosphere is saturated with trace spice. You've been breathing it since you arrived. Better to acclimate consciously than suffer withdrawal without knowing why. Tony's medical sensors scanned the liquid. Jarvis would normally analyze this, but since I shut him down to avoid a religious apocalypse. Bruce, you're our biochemistry expert. Bruce took a cautious sip, his enhanced senses cataloging the compound. It's safe. Actually, it's extraordinarily beneficial cellular regeneration properties. Neural enhancement, metabolic optimization. This is the most valuable substance in their universe? He looked at Paul. I'm starting to understand why everyone's so twitchy about protecting it. Thor drained his cup in one swallow, then grimaced. It tastes of prophecy and sand. I mislike it, but I have ingested far worse in Nidavelir's forges. As the Avengers drank, Paul continued his explanation. The Spacing Guild has a monopoly on space travel. The great houses play political games for advantage. The Bene Gesserit manipulate bloodlines and plant religions. Chom controls commerce. The Padisha Emperor, whom I overthrew, commanded the Sardaukar terror troops. And beneath it all, the Fremen survived in the deep desert, waiting for their prophet. His voice went flat. Me, whether I wanted the role or not. Your wife said something about a golden path, Steve said, his strategic mind assembling the picture. What is that? Paul's face became a mask of controlled agony. The golden path is survival. For 3,500 years after my death, my son Leto will rule as a tyrant god emperor, crushing humanity beneath his prescient will. He will breed humans who are invisible to prescience. He will scatter humanity so far across the universe that no single catastrophe can exterminate us. The golden path is species survival purchased with individual suffering. It is the lesser evil I saw in my visions. That's insane, Tony said flatly. You're justifying a multi-millennium tyranny based on visions that might not even happen. They will happen, Paul snapped, and the absolute certainty in his voice was more unsettling than anger. I have lived them. I have experienced every variation. There is no path where humanity survives intact that doesn't run through golden tyranny. The only question is whether I have the strength to condemn my son to that existence. Strange's mystical senses finally pinpointed what had been bothering him. You're not just seeing possible futures. You're experiencing them, living them. Your consciousness exists across multiple timeline branches simultaneously. His expression shifted to something resembling horror. Paul, you're experiencing temporal schizophrenia on a scale I didn't think was possible. How are you still sane? Who says I am? Paul's laugh was bitter. I watched my father die. I've killed men with my own hands. I've ordered the executions of innocent people to prevent greater evils. I've experienced the lives of every human who lived before me through genetic memory. I am many people, Stephen Strange. Sanity is a luxury I sacrificed the day I drank the water of life. An uncomfortable silence settled over the chamber. Finally, Clint, who had been characteristically quiet, spoke up. Okay, I'm just a guy with a bow, so maybe I'm missing something. But it sounds like you've got a trolley problem the size of a galaxy. People are going to die no matter what. You're just trying to minimize the body count. 23 different philosophers in my ancestral memory have made that exact argument, Paul said. 3 of them eventually concluded that anyone making that argument has already justified becoming a monster. Then why are you doing it? Steve demanded. If you know it's monstrous, why go through with it? Because the alternative is extinction. For the first time, real emotion cracked through Paul's prescient calm. I've seen the futures where I refuse. Humanity scatters and breeds itself into genetic stagnation, or we consolidate and are wiped out by a single catastrophic event, or we develop prescient abilities across the entire species and become trapped in an eternal present where no one can act, because everyone sees all consequences. The golden path is terrible, Captain Rogers, but it is the only path where humans remain human and survive. Thunder rumbled outside the palace, not natural thunder, but Thor's unconscious response to divine rage. I have lived 3,000 years, Thor said, his voice carrying the weight of ages. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched friends grow old and die while I remained young. And I have learned one absolute truth. Anyone who claims their tyranny is necessary is a tyrant first and a pragmatist second. You speak of preserving humanity, but what humanity are you preserving? One ground under the boot of eternal dictatorship? Better a boot than extinction, Chani said coldly. You speak from the privilege of an immortal god. The Fremen speak from generations of survival against impossible odds. We know the price of existence. Then you're slaves who've learned to love your chains, Natasha said quietly. I know. I used to be one. The tension in the room could have been cut with a crysknife. It was Bruce who broke it, his scientist mind cutting through ideology to mechanism. The Guild. You said they're demanding we be handed over. Why? What threat do we actually pose? Paul's expression became calculating again. Prescient sight, reasserting control over human emotion. Guild navigators exist in prescient symbiosis. They see safe paths through folded space. When you arrived, you created, static in their visions. They experience what I'm experiencing now, uncertainty, to beings whose existence depends on seeing the safe path. You represent existential terror. They would rather destroy you than live with the possibility that they might fold space blindly and emerge inside a star. So we're a threat just by existing, Tony summarized. Great. Love that for us. There's more, Paul continued. The Bene Gesserit see you as unpredicted variables in their breeding program. The great houses see you as potential weapons to use against me. The Harkonnen remnants, yes, they still exist, see you as their path back to power. Everyone wants to control you, kill you, or use you. Welcome to Imperial politics. Steve made a command decision. How long until the Guild's ultimatum expires? 42 minutes. Then here's what we're going to do. We're not letting the Guild dictate terms. We're not letting anyone kill us for the crime of existing. And we're definitely not making judgments about your golden path until we see more of this universe for ourselves. Steve fixed Paul with a look that had stared down Thanos. You want us to trust you? Start by standing with us against the Guild. Show us you're more than a puppet dancing to prophecy strings. Paul studied Steve for a long moment, prescient calculation warring with something almost like hope. If I do this, the Guild might embargo Arrakis. Spice shipments would stop. The economic consequences could collapse the Imperium's stability. Or, Strange interjected, they might back down when they realize you're not bluffing. Organizations dependent on monopolies rarely risk everything over a single incident. It's bad for business. A smile ghosted across Paul's face, the first genuine expression they'd seen from him. You think like a mentat, Dr. Strange. Calculate probabilities without perfect information and act anyway. It's refreshing. I had forgotten what uncertainty feels like. Chani moved to her husband's side, her hand finding his. Usul, if you defy the Guild, the political ramifications will be what they will be, Paul finished. For years, I have walked the path of least terrible outcome. Perhaps these strangers offer something I thought impossible, a chance to walk a different path entirely. He turned to the Avengers. I will stand with you against the Guild's ultimatum. In return, I ask one thing. Judge me not by my intentions or my visions, but by my actions in the present. For once in my cursed existence, I cannot see what I will do next. That freedom is terrifying and glorious in equal measure. Steve extended his hand. Deal. We watch each other's backs until we figure out what's really going on. After that, we'll see. Paul clasped his forearm in the Fremen manner, and something passed between them, recognition between two men who had carried the weight of impossible choices. Fedaykin, Paul's voice rang out. Summon the council and prepare a response to the Guild. And someone get a message to Stilgar, tell him I need every sandworm in riding distance positioned around Arrakeen. If the Guild wants a demonstration of who controls Arrakis, we'll give them one they'll see from orbit. As the Fremen moved to obey, Tony sidled up to Steve. Cap, I hope you know what you're doing. We just allied with a guy who casually discusses genocide as policy. I know exactly what I'm doing, Tony. We're buying time to gather information and assess the real situation. Trust no one. Verify everything. And keep our exit options open. Steve paused. But did you notice something? When he talked about not knowing what he'll do next, he looked relieved. Whatever else he is, I think Paul Atreides might actually be telling the truth about being a prisoner of his own power. Or he's the best manipulator in the universe and just played us perfectly. Natasha added, Stay sharp, everyone. The next 40 minutes are going to tell us a lot about what kind of universe we've landed in. Above Arrakis, in the Guild Hayliner's navigation chamber, a navigator suspended in spice gas experienced something it had never felt in 300 years of prescient space folding. Fear. The futures were fractured. The paths were unclear. And somewhere on the planet below, 7 impossible variables had just allied with the one human whose prescience rivaled the Guild's own. The universe was about to discover what happened when Earth's mightiest heroes met the terrible mathematics of necessary evil. And not even prescience could predict the outcome. The Guild's Highliner hung in Arrakis' orbit like a geometric monument to monopolistic power. A city-sized cylinder whose interior could swallow dozens of transport ships whole. Inside its navigation chamber, suspended in orange spice gas so thick it was nearly liquid, the navigator known as Edric writhed in mathematical agony. Every calculation led to static. Every probability stream terminated in uncertainty. The 7 variables below had introduced chaos into a system that had operated on prescient certainty for 10,000 years. Ultimatum time approaches. Edric's translated thoughts echoed through the Guild delegation chamber. Muad'Dib must comply. The prescient order must be restored. We cannot navigate blindly. On Arrakis' surface, Paul stood on the palace balcony overlooking Arrakine's sprawling expanse. The Avengers arrayed behind him. The city stretched to the shield wall, but it was what lay beyond that caught their attention. The deep desert where sand met sky in heat shimmer and infinite horizon. You asked to see the aftermath of my jihad. Captain Rogers? Paul said quietly. Look, the holographic projection Chani activated showed not Arrakis, but worlds light years away. Burning cities, mass graves, populations that had resisted the Fremen religious crusade wiped out with surgical precision, and everywhere, the green and black banner of Muad'Dib planted among the corpses. Steve's jaw tightened. Tony's faceplate remained closed, but his vital signs spiked. Even Thor, who had seen Asgard's ancient wars, looked disturbed. 40 planets in the Orion cluster, Paul continued, his voice mechanical, reciting statistics like a mentat. 15 billion casualties across a decade of conquest. The Fremen call it the spread of truth. History will call it genocide. I call it the exact body count I saw in my visions, the minimum number of deaths required to prevent humanity's extinction. Minimum, Natasha repeated, her voice cold. You're saying you couldn't find a way to save those 15 billion? I saw 83,412 variations where I tried, Paul said, turning to face them. In 70,000 of them, the death toll increased. In 12,000, the jihad extended for generations instead of decades. In the remaining variations, I was assassinated, and someone with less control took my place. 15 billion dead is the lesser evil. Black Widow, I have lived every alternative. Bruce spoke carefully, the scientist in him seeking to understand before judging. You're treating it like a math problem. Minimize casualties, maximize survival. But people aren't numbers in an equation. I know. For a moment, Paul's prescient mask cracked, revealing something raw beneath. I know their names. All of them. Through ancestral memory and prescient vision, I have experienced their deaths. I am haunted by 15 billion ghosts, Dr. Banner. But I am more haunted by the 300 billion who would have died in the alternatives. This is madness, Thor declared. You speak of necessary evils and lesser atrocities as if they absolve you. They do not. In Asgard, we learned that any action taken in fear of what might be creates only what we feared. Asgard is dead, Paul said flatly, and Thor's expression went thunderous. I do not mean offense, Thor Odinson. I mean that I have seen your world's fate in 1,000 visions, and in none of them does Asgard survive intact. You know the price of hesitation. You know what it means to fail to act when action could have prevented catastrophe. The accusation hit harder than Thor expected. Ragnarok, the destruction of his home. Could he have prevented it with more ruthless action? The thought was poison. Don't, Steve said sharply, reading Thor's expression. Don't let him twist your grief into justification for atrocity. There's a difference between failing to prevent tragedy and actively causing it. Is there? Paul asked. Tell me, Captain, when Thanos killed half the universe, did you not later travel through time to undo it? Did you not sacrifice a version of your friend Natasha to retrieve the Soul Stone? Did you not make choices where some died so others might live? Steve's silence was answer enough. We're not so different, you and I, Paul continued. We both make terrible choices because someone must. The difference is that I see all the consequences in advance, and you discover them after. Tell me which is crueler. The difference, Natasha said, her voice cutting through the philosophical fog, is that we tried everything before making those choices. We explored every option, fought to the last moment, and only sacrificed when there was literally no alternative left. She gestured at the holographic carnage. You saw the alternatives and chose death because your visions told you to. You trusted your power more than human ingenuity. Paul's eyes narrowed. My visions are human ingenuity. They're possibility mapped to probability. They're an alarm cut through the palace, not mechanical, but human. A Fremen cry of warning that carried across the city like wildfire. Worm sign. The shout echoed from a dozen throats. Shai Hulud, multiple worms approaching Arakeen. Paul's smile was sharp as a crysknife. Right on time. Stilgar is nothing if not punctual. He turned to the Avengers. Come, I'm going to show you what real power looks like in this universe. And then we're going to have a conversation with the Guild about who actually controls Arrakis. They rushed to the palace's highest tower, and what they saw defied rational explanation. The desert around Arakeen's shield wall was moving, not with individual worm sign, but with dozens. Sandworms breached the surface in synchronized eruption, their massive crystalline teeth catching Arrakis's harsh sunlight. Each creature was hundreds of meters long, their rings flexing with ancient power. That's impossible, Bruce breathed. The ecological coordination alone? How did you call them all here? I didn't call them, Paul said. I asked. The Fremen have a relationship with Shai-Hulud that predates Imperial control. We ride them. We harvest their teeth for Christ knives. We share the desert with them because we understand this is their world. We are merely permitted to survive here. Tony's sensors were going haywire trying to map the biomechanical complexity. Those things are living spice factories. The symbiotic relationship between organism and environment is Jarvis would have a field day analyzing this. Your Jarvis is why the Guild fears you, Chani said, joining them on the tower. News of your thinking machine has spread. Already, religious factions are calling for jihad against the abomination. The fact that Muad'Dib shelters you may cost him political capital he cannot spare. Then maybe he shouldn't have, Tony said. We never asked for protection. You didn't need to ask, Paul replied. The moment you arrived and broke prescience, I saw, or rather, didn't see the shape of possibility. You represent something I thought impossible. Genuine uncertainty. In a life where I've experienced every outcome, that uncertainty is the first real choice I've had in years. The Guild Highliner began its descent not landing, but moving into low orbit, a clear threat. Its weapons ports, rarely used in 10,000 years of commercial monopoly, began to glow with charging energy. Are they seriously about to shoot at us? Clint asked, knocking an arrow out of pure reflex. They're posturing, Strange said, his mystical senses reading the dimensional stress. They want Paul to back down. Classic brinkmanship. Paul's expression hardened into something that made Steve recognize a fellow tactician making a combat decision. Fedaykin, signal the worms. Full breach, make the sand speak. What happened next would be recorded in Fremen oral tradition for generations. At Paul's command, 50 sandworms breached simultaneously, their rings creating a rhythmic thumping that resonated through Arrakis's crust like a planetary heartbeat. The sound was deafening, primal, utterly alien to anything the Avengers had experienced. And then Paul did something that made even the Guild's navigator scream in its spice gas. He opened a comm channel not to the Guild, but to every listening post, every transport ship, every monitoring station in the Arrakis system. I am Paul Muad'Dib, Lisan al-Gaib to the Fremen, Emperor of the known universe. The Spacing Guild has demanded I surrender 7 beings whose only crime is existing outside prescient vision. They threaten embargo if I refuse. His voice carried the absolute authority of prophecy made manifest. I refuse. And I remind the Guild of a fundamental truth. He who can destroy a thing, controls a thing. On the holographic display, Guild officials in the Hayliner's command center visibly panicked. The spice melange exists nowhere in the universe save Arrakis, Paul continued. It is produced by the sandworms you see arrayed before this city. I am Fremen. I speak for Shai-Hulud. And I tell you now, if the Guild attempts to harm those under my protection, I will order every worm on Arrakis to breach the spice fields. I will disrupt the spice cycle so completely that navigator prescience will starve. Your navigators will go mad without spice. Your monopoly will collapse, and the Imperium will burn. He's bluffing, Tony murmured. He has to be. That would crash the entire galactic economy. He's not bluffing, Natasha said, watching Paul's body language. He's absolutely serious, and the Guild knows it. Thor gripped Stormbreaker. If they fire, I can deflect the strike. But their ship is enormous civilian casualties if we retaliate. Hold, Steve commanded. This is Paul's play. We watch. The silence stretched for 30 seconds that felt like hours. Then the Guild Highliner's weapons ports began to power down. A transmission crackled through Navigator. Edric's thoughts translated into flat, emotionless speech. Muad'Dib has made his position clear. The Guild withdraws its ultimatum. However, we formally protest the presence of thinking machine technology on Imperial worlds. This matter will be brought before the Landsraad Council. Protest noted. Paul said coldly. Now leave my planet's orbit before I change my mind about the spice cycle. The Highliner began its ascent, folding away into space with a dimensional shimmer that made Strange wince. As the worms began their descent back into the sand, Paul turned to the Avengers. His expression was unreadable triumph, mixed with exhaustion, mixed with something that looked like fear of his own actions. That, he said quietly, is how you maintain power in the Imperium. Not through strength alone, but through the credible threat of mutually assured destruction. The Guild knows I could destroy the spice. They know I've seen the futures where I do it. And they know that I've proven I'm willing to pursue terrible necessities. You would have done it? Steve said. It wasn't a question. I've already done it. In 3,000 alternate timelines I've experienced. I know exactly what it costs. I know the death toll down to the individual, and I know it's preferable to letting the Guild dictate terms to a sovereign world. Paul's voice dropped. This is what governance looks like in a prescient universe, Captain Rogers. Every choice is a trolley problem on a galactic scale. Bruce was staring at the desert where the worms had vanished. The ecological balance here is, it's a knife's edge. You really could destroy the spice cycle. It wouldn't even be that hard. Introduce foreign microorganisms, disrupt the sand trout life cycle, contaminate the pre-spice mass. You're sitting on the galaxy's economic throat. Yes, Paul agreed. And that is the only reason the Guild backed down. They need Arrakis more than Arrakis needs them. But now they know you exist. Now they know your wild cards and prescient vision. Every faction in the Imperium will be coming for you, some to recruit you, some to study you, and some to eliminate you before you disrupt the careful balance further. Let them come, Thor declared. We are Avengers. We have faced armies before. Not like these, Chani warned. The great houses have fought political wars for 10,000 years. The Bene Gesserit have manipulated bloodlines for 90 generations. The Sardaukar were bred on a prison planet specifically to be unstoppable. This is not your universe of open warfare, Thunder God. This is a universe of poison, politics, and religious fervor. Tony's HUD flagged an incoming transmission, encrypted, routed through channels even Jarvis wouldn't have recognized if he were active. Speaking of which, we've got company. Multiple signatures approaching Arrakeen, ornithopters, but the IFF tags are Harkonnen? Paul's expression went deadly cold. Impossible. I scattered the Harkonnen forces. I destroyed their power base. Unless they've been rebuilding in secret, Natasha finished. Using your jihad as cover while everyone was distracted. Classic insurgency tactics. Steve was already in tactical mode. Defensive positions. Thor. Clint high ground. Tony. Aerial reconnaissance. Natasha. Bruce. Strange with me. Paul, if this is a trap, it's not a trap, Paul said. But his prescient certainty was gone, replaced by the uncertainty the Avengers had brought. Or rather, I can't see if it is. You've blinded me to Harkonnen scheming. For all I know, they've been planning this for months. The ornithopters touched down in the palace courtyard with military precision. The figures that emerged wore Harkonnen colors. But their body language was wrong, too confident, too precise. These weren't defeated remnants. These were professional operatives. Their leader removed her helmet, revealing a woman whose beauty was weaponized perfection, whose movements carried deadly grace, and whose eyes held the calculation of someone who had studied the Avengers' every recorded battle. Paul Atreides, she said, her voice carrying harmonics of trained vocal control, and the miraculous strangers who broke prescience. How? Convenient? My name is Margot Fenring, and I come with a proposal from parties interested in a new balance of power. You're Bene Gesserit. Strange said immediately, his mystical senses reading the pattern of her life force. But working with Harkonnen remnants? That's a strange alliance. Margot's smile was sharp. The Sisterhood has many factions, Doctor Strange. Not all of us believe Paul Atreides should control humanity's genetic destiny. And not all of us believe his golden path is the only solution to extinction. She turned her gaze to Tony. We're particularly interested in your thinking machine. Such technology could change everything if it could be studied. Controlled? Reproduced? Hard pass, Tony said flatly. Jarvis isn't a weapon or a commodity. Everything is a commodity in the Imperium, Margot replied. The question is, what price do you demand? We offer sanctuary from Paul's theocracy, resources to return you home, and protection from the Guild's ongoing grudge. All we ask is cooperation. Cooperation in overthrowing a government? Steve said. Let me guess, you want us to be your weapons against Paul, and in return, you promise to be benevolent dictators instead of tyrannical prophets. Margot's laugh was genuine. You understand imperial politics quickly, Captain. But consider, Paul admits he's a tyrant. He admits his jihad killed billions. He admits his son will rule as a god emperor for millennia. Is that really the future you want to support? The question hung in the desert air like spice on the wind. And for the first time since arriving, the Avengers had to confront a fundamental question. In a universe where all choices led to terrible outcomes, which terrible outcome did they choose? The standoff in Arakeen's courtyard crystallized into perfect stillness. Margot Fenring's Harkonnen-backed operatives on one side, Paul's Fedaykin on the other, and the Avengers caught in the middle of a political calculation 10,000 years in the making. Steve Rogers had faced this scenario before. Multiple factions, hidden agendas, everyone claiming their cause justified any means. Stand down, he ordered his team quietly. Then louder. Nobody moves. Nobody fires. We're going to talk this through like civilized people. Civilized. Margot tasted the word like fine wine. How quaint. Captain Rogers, civilization in the Imperium is a thin veneer over genetic manipulation, religious exploitation, and economic stranglehold. But very well, let us be civilized. She made a gesture, and her operatives lowered their weapons fractionally. Paul descended from the tower, his Fedaykin maintaining perfect defensive positions. His eyes never left Margot, reading body language in 1,000 futures he could no longer see. Margot Fenring. Your husband, Count Fenring, was one of the few people I ever respected. He understood the burden of capability, the curse of being able to do what others cannot. My husband is dead, Margot said coldly. Killed in your jihad when he refused to bend knee to your theocracy. So please, spare me the appeals to past friendship. Tony's sensors were mapping the standoff in real time. Cap, I'm reading at least 40 Harkonnen troops in those ornithopters, plus whatever else is hiding in the city. This isn't just a diplomatic visit, this is a military operation, which I'm choosing not to initiate, Margot said pleasantly, apparently reading Tony's body language, if not his words. Despite having sufficient force to attempt an assassination, I'm here with a genuine offer, as distasteful as that may be to everyone involved. Bruce stepped forward, his analytical mind cutting through the political theater. You said you could get us home. How? We don't even know how we got here. There's no scientific framework for dimensional transit in this universe that I've seen. You've been here 4 hours, Dr. Banner, Margot replied. Did you think spice was the only secret Arrakis holds? She produced a small crystalline device that made Strange's mystical senses flare. The Bene Gesserit have studied artifacts from before the Butlerian Jihad. Pre-human civilizations left. Tools. Technologies the Guild and Great Houses deliberately forgot because they threatened existing power structures. We found something on IX, a dimensional breach generator. Inactive, but with your doctor, Strange's magical assistance, and Stark's technological genius, it could be reactivated. You're offering us a way home, Natasha said slowly, in exchange for helping you overthrow Paul. That's the deal. Not overthrow, Margot corrected. Contain. Paul Atreides is trapped by his own prescience. His golden path requires tyranny, genocide, and the suppression of human potential for millennia. We offer an alternative. Use your unique unpredictability to create a future even Paul cannot see. Break his prescient monopoly. Force him to release his stranglehold on humanity's destiny. By killing him, Paul said flatly. Don't dress it up in noble language, Margot. You want me dead so the sisterhood can resume their breeding program without interference. Can you blame us? Margot's composure cracked slightly. You were supposed to be our Kwisatz Haderach, our tool, raised and shaped by Bene Gesserit training. Instead, you slipped your leash, married a Fremen woman outside our genetic planning, and now your prescience threatens to make our 90-generation breeding program obsolete. You're right, we want you removed, but not necessarily dead. Contained would suffice. Thor's patience, already strained, broke entirely. Enough! Lightning crackled along Stormbreaker's length. I care nothing for your breeding programs or your prescient games. You speak of containing a man as if he were a dangerous beast. You justify assassination as political necessity. You are ALL tyrants hiding behind different philosophies. The Fedakan raised their weapons. Margot's operatives responded in kind. Steve's shield came up reflexively. Everyone calm down. Steve's command voice, honed through decades of combat leadership, cut through the rising tension. Thor, stand down. Margot, tell your people to lower their weapons. Paul, control your guards. We're not doing this. Why not? Paul asked, and there was something haunting in his voice. Why not let them try? I'm curious to see if I would survive an assassination attempt I cannot predict. It would be novel. Because, despite everything, Steve said firmly, I don't believe anyone here actually wants a bloodbath in this courtyard. Margot, you came with an offer, not an army. Paul, you could have had us killed the moment we arrived but chose dialogue. Everyone's playing angles, but nobody's pulled the trigger yet. That tells me there's room for a better solution. Clint, still on overwatch from a tower, spoke through comms. Cap, I hate to interrupt the group therapy session, but we've got more company incoming. Big signatures, military grade. IFF reads as Sardaukar? Paul's expression shifted to genuine surprise. Sardaukar? Impossible. The Emperor's terror troops were disbanded after I took the throne. Unless his prescient sight flickered, grasping at futures he couldn't quite see. Unless someone retained a hidden force. Someone with resources and motivation to keep the Empire's deadliest soldiers in reserve? The Bene Gesserit, Natasha realized. You kept them secret? A private army disguised as disbanded. Margot's smile was cold. Insurance, Captain Rogers. We've maintained a single Sardaukar legion in cryosleep on a moon even the Guild doesn't know exists. Consider them. Leverage in case this negotiation doesn't proceed as planned. This is a coup, Steve said flatly. You didn't come to negotiate. You came to force Paul's hand with us as the pretext. A coup requires surprise, Margot countered. I've told you my forces, my backup, and my objective. This is simply aggressive negotiation. The Avengers represent a unique opportunity variables outside prescient control. With you, we could actually challenge Paul's monopoly on futures. Without you, we're playing a game he's already won in 1,000 timelines. The Sardaukar transport began its landing approach, and Tony's sensors screamed warnings. These guys are different. Enhanced physiology, military-grade shields, weapons designed for maximum lethality. They're not here to negotiate, they're here to intimidate or execute. If necessary, Margot said pleasantly, the Sardaukar don't do half measures. Paul's voice dropped to something dangerous. You would unleash the Emperor's terror troops on Arrakis, on the Fremen homeworld. Margot, even by Bene Gesserit standards, this is insane. You're threatening a religious war that would make my jihad look like a border skirmish. Then give us the Avengers, Margot said simply. Let us study them, learn from them, use their unpredictability to model futures beyond your prescient reach. In return, the Sardaukar withdraw, the Harkonnen remnants stand down, and the Sisterhood acknowledges your empire. We simply want balance. You're not the only one who should control humanity's future. Bruce's voice was quiet but carried across the courtyard. She's right about one thing. Paul, you're a dictator with prescient justification. She's offering to be a different kind of dictator with genetic justification. Neither of you are offering freedom, just different flavors of control. Freedom is a luxury for species not facing extinction, Paul said. Ask your Captain Rogers, he made impossible choices to save half the universe. Would you call him a dictator? The difference, Steve said slowly, his mind working through the moral calculus, is that we tried everything else first. We fought, we sacrificed, we explored every option before making those choices. You, Paul, you saw all the options at once and picked the one that let you maintain power. That's not the same thing, isn't it? Paul's laugh was bitter. You fought Thanos with the Infinity Stone's power to reshape reality itself. You didn't destroy them after. You didn't eliminate that temptation. You kept them because you knew future threats might require them. I am the Infinity Stones of this universe, Captain. I am the power that prevents extinction, and you're asking me to destroy myself on principle while humanity's survival hangs in the balance. The Sardaukar transport touched down with military precision. 200 of the Imperium's finest warriors emerged in perfect formation, men trained on a prison planet so harsh it made Arrakis look hospitable, warriors who had conquered worlds for the Padisha emperors, soldiers who knew only absolute obedience and absolute victory. Their commander, a scarred veteran whose eyes held the flat calculation of a professional killer, approached the standoff and assessed the situation in seconds. Lady Fenring, he said, his voice carrying Seleucus Secundus's harsh accent. Are these the targets? Or do we have a more complicated situation? Complicated, Margot acknowledged. Colonel Bashar, stand ready but do not engage unless I give explicit orders. Understood. The Sardaukar fanned into assault positions with practiced efficiency. They didn't threaten, they simply positioned themselves to execute violence with maximum effectiveness when commanded. Dr. Strange's hands were moving through increasingly complex patterns, his consciousness touching the dimensional fabric of this universe. I'm detecting something. The breach that brought us here, it's not fully closed. There's a resonance, like an open wound in space-time. If I could locate it, I might be able to force it open again, get us home without needing their device. How long? Steve asked quietly. Hours, maybe days. And I'd need time to work undisturbed? Which Strange gestured at the armed standoff. Seems unlikely. Tony made a command decision. Jarvis, wake up. Full power. I need tactical analysis now. Sir, I thought we were maintaining radio silence to avoid religious. The religious apocalypse is already here, Jarvis. Might as well have proper sensors. The moment Tony's AI came online, every Fremen in the courtyard tensed. Religious fervor warred with disciplined control. These were warriors who had killed in the name of destroying thinking machines, and now their prophet stood defending one. Abomination, one Fedaykin whispered, the words spreading like wildfire through their ranks. Paul raised his hand, and the muttering ceased. My Fedaykin, you trust my visions. You trust my leadership. I tell you now, this thinking machine is not the evil you fear. The Butlerian Jihad fought machines that enslaved humans. This AI serves its creator. There is a difference. There is no difference. The shout came from a younger Fremen, his face flushed with religious conviction. The Jihad taught us any thinking machine leads to slavery. How can you, who are Lazan al-Gaib, who are the voice of the desert, to defend this blasphemy? Because I can no longer see futures with certainty, Paul said, and his honesty was devastating. These strangers have blinded my prescience. For the first time in years, I must act on faith rather than knowledge. And my faith tells me that not all thinking machines are evil, only those that seek to replace human judgment. Stark's AI enhances human capability. It does not replace it. The theological argument was clearly losing him support. Steve could see the Fedaykins' loyalty wavering, not betrayal, but deep discomfort at their prophet defending what their religion defined as ultimate evil. Natasha moved close to Steve. We're losing control of the situation. Multiple factions, religious tensions, military forces. This is about 3 minutes from turning into a massacre. Agreed. Steve made eye contact with each team member. Silent communication perfected through years of partnership. We need a circuit breaker, something that shifts everyone's attention away from killing each other. Thor raised Stormbreaker. I can provide a distraction that... Wait. Bruce was staring at the desert beyond the shield wall, his enhanced senses detecting something the others had missed. There's something coming. Big. Really big. Multiple signatures. And they're moving fast. The rumble hit them before the sight a deep, rhythmic thumping that made the palace foundations vibrate. Sandworm sign. But not the controlled demonstration Paul had orchestrated earlier. This was something wild, uncontrolled, impossible, Chani breathed, her Fremen senses reading the vibration patterns. That rhythm, that's a mating frenzy. Multiple worms competing for dominance. But it's the wrong season. They shouldn't be. My gamma radiation, Bruce said, horror dawning. When I arrived, you said it might affect the ecosystem. What if it's already started? What if my presence is disrupting the worm's biological cycles? Paul's prescient sight, fractured and uncertain, suddenly snapped into agonizing clarity around one specific future. His face went white. Everyone inside the shield wall. Now, he turned to Margot, your political games end here. If those worms breach Arakeen in a mating frenzy, thousands die. Sardaukar? Fedaykin? Harkonnen, it doesn't matter. We have approximately 4 minutes before the largest worm convergence in Fremen history hits this city. You're lying, Margot said, but her voice lacked conviction. This is a trick to... The first sandworm breached within sight of the city, its 400-meter length erupting from the sand, like a god of ancient earth made manifest. Then another, and another. 5, 10, 20 sandworms, all converging on Arakeen with the single-minded purpose of biological imperative overriding territorial behavior. This is impossible, Colonel Bashar said, his professional demeanor cracking. Sardaukar combat doctrine has no protocols for multiple kaiju-level organisms attacking simultaneously. Tony's sensors were painting a nightmare scenario. They're not attacking, they're drawn here. Something's calling them. Bruce, your gamma signature is like a beacon. They're attracted to the energy. Then I'll lead them away, Bruce said immediately. I'll get far enough from the city that... No time, Paul said. They're already too close. We need to... He stopped, his prescient sight showing him something that made even his iron control waver. Captain Rogers, I need you to trust me. I'm seeing a path through this that saves the city, stops the worms, and potentially solves our political deadlock. But it requires something none of us have tried. Cooperation. Steve assessed the situation, 20 sandworms bearing down on a city of millions. Multiple armed factions in the courtyard. Religious tensions at breaking point. An oppression tyrant asking for trust. What do you need? Paul's smile was grim. I need Earth's mightiest heroes to do what they do best. Save the world. Or, in this case, save Arrakis. And I need the Bene Gesserit, Harkonnen remnants, and even the Sardaukar to help. Because if we don't work together in the next 3 minutes, there won't be a planet left to fight over. Margot Fenring stared at the approaching sandworms, performed a rapid Mentat-level calculation, and made a decision that would echo through Imperial politics for generations. Very well, Muad'Dib, temporary alliance. But when this crisis is resolved, we finish our negotiation. Agreed, Paul said. Then to the Avengers. Are you ready to see what a prescient mind, a thinking machine, an Asgardian god, and a gamma-powered rage monster can do when they stop fighting each other and start fighting for survival? Thor's grin was fierce. Finally, a simple problem with a simple solution. Hit it until it stops moving. Not quite, Paul said. We need to stop them without killing them. Shai Hulud are sacred. They produce the spice. We need to redirect their mating frenzy away from the city while preserving the worms. It's impossible except you've made impossible things happen before. Steve Rogers looked at his team, at the approaching worms, at the fractious political factions grudgingly preparing to cooperate, and made the kind of command decision that defined Avengers leadership. All right, here's how we do this. Tony aerial coordination, Thor lightning control and crowd management. Bruce, stay human for now. We need your scientific mind more than Hulk's strength. Strange, mystical barriers if things get desperate. Natasha, Clint work with the Fremen. They know these creatures. And Paul, Steve fixed the Prussian Emperor with his command stare. You coordinate everyone through whatever telepathic or Prussian abilities you have. Make us one force. Paul's voice, when he spoke, carried through every mind in the courtyard, not through voice, but through prescient connection, binding them temporarily into a single coordinated unit. Then let us show the Imperium, he said, what happens when impossible variables work with terrible purpose toward a common goal. Avengers Fedaykin Sardaukar Harkonnen forces coordinate. As the first sandworm reached the shield wall and the battle for Arrakeen began, Steve Rogers realized they just created something that had never existed in Dune's universe. A genuine coalition of enemies united by necessity rather than prescient control. And somewhere in the deeper desert, ancient forces stirred, as if the planet itself recognized that something fundamental had shifted in the eternal struggle between tyranny and freedom, between prescience and choice, between the terrible purpose and the impossible alternative. The shield wall, Arrakis's geological marvel that protected Arrakeen from the deep desert's worst storms, became a battleground between human ingenuity and primal biological imperative. 20 sandworms, each 400 meters of crystalline toothed hunger driven by mating frenzy, converged on the city with the unstoppable momentum of geological forces made flesh. Tony Stark shot into I continue with sky, repulsors at full burn, Jarvis calculating trajectory vectors for creatures that didn't care about mathematics. Okay, I need someone to explain real quick. How do you stop 20 kaiju-sized sandworms without killing them, when killing them would crash the galactic economy? Maker hooks. Channy's voice crackled over the comm system Paul had rapidly established. Fremen ride the worms using hooks that spread their segments, causes pain, forces them to surface, but these are in mating frenzy. Normal methods won't work, but might distract, Paul finished, his mind processing 1,000 strategic permutations simultaneously. Colonel Bashar, your Sardaukar have grab belts. Airborne insertion with maker hooks target the lead worms. Not to control them, just to irritate them enough to slow their approach. The Sardaukar colonel's face showed brief surprise that Paul knew about their classified equipment, then professional respect as he recognized solid tactical thinking. Squads 3 through 7. Airborne harassment. Make those worms angry enough to fight each other instead of reaching the city. Thor stood atop the shield wall. Stormbreaker raised to cloud-heavy skies. If irritation is required, I excel at providing it. Lightning arced from the hammer, slamming into the sand before the lead worm, not enough to harm, but enough to create heat and light that disrupted its sensory organs. The massive creature veered away from Arrakeen, directly toward another worm in similar frenzy. That's working, Bruce called, his scientific mind cataloging the worm's behavioral responses despite the chaos. They're territorial during mating. If we can trigger aggressive responses between them, they'll fight each other instead of approaching the city, Natasha finished. She was coordinating with Fedaykin veterans, learning decades of worm lore compressed into seconds of battlefield necessity. Clint, we need precision strikes to separate the pack. Can you thread arrows between their segments? Clint Barton, perched on an ornithopter's wing with a Fremen spotter beside him, studied the massive creatures with professional assessment. I've shot smaller targets at greater distances in worse conditions. Jarvis, feed me wind calculations. Mr. Barton, the atmospheric turbulence created by 2,400-meter organisms moving through sand is beyond my predictive modeling capacity. I can give you best guess approximations with a 43% confidence interval. Good enough. Fremen guy, what's the weak point? The Fremen spotter, a grizzled veteran named Othem, pointed to the space between segments. There. Strike true, and the pain will turn them from their course, but miss, and you only enrage them further. No pressure then, Clint drew, breathed, and released. The arrow tipped with a shaped charge Tony had modified in 30 seconds flew true, detonating precisely between two segments of the nearest worm. The creature's roar was felt more than heard, a subsonic vibration that made bones ache and teeth rattle. It twisted away from Arrakeen, directly into the path of another worm. The two collided with the force of geological cataclysm, sand exploding in massive plumes as 400 meters of ancient predator met 400 meters of mating-crazed rival. "It's working," Bruce shouted. "Keep them fighting each other, as long as their territorial aggression exceeds their attraction to my gamma signature." Doctor Strange, floating in lotus position above the palace, frowned as his mystical senses detected something wrong. "Paul, the dimensional breach, I mentioned it's expanding. The worm's movement, the electromagnetic chaos from Thor's lightning, even Tony's arc reactor, it's all feeding energy into the original tier that brought us here. If it gets much larger, it could destabilize local space-time," Paul finished, his prescient mind seeing the possibility even if he couldn't see the specific outcome. "How long?" "Minutes. Maybe less. I'm trying to contain it, but I'm not familiar with this universe's dimensional architecture. Every spell I cast feels like I'm working blind." "Then we have a deadline," Steve said, coordinating defensive positions with Fedaykin and Sardaukar soldiers who, minutes ago, had been ready to kill each other. "Paul, what's the fastest way to end this mating frenzy?" Paul's prescient sight flickered through fragmentary futures. None complete, all uncertain because of the Avengers' presence. Normally Fremen would wait it out 3 to 4 hours until the biological imperative passes. But with the dimensional breach expanding, we don't have that time. We need to... He stopped, seeing something. The water of life. Sandworm bile, properly concentrated. It's a powerful sedative to the worms in massive doses. But we'd need to deliver it directly to each worm. And we'd need quantities we don't have immediately available. "Wait," Tony said, his engineer's mind already calculating. "Jarvis, analyze the chemical composition of this water of life from Paul's bioscan data. Can we synthesize it?" "Sir, the molecular complexity is extraordinary. But with the right precursor chemicals and an energy source for rapid catalysis, your arc reactor, for instance, I could theoretically produce a synthetic approximation in 7.3 minutes. Do it. Send the formula to Bruce. He'll know what organic compounds we can harvest fast." Bruce was already moving, his scientific expertise overriding the gamma-charged danger always lurking beneath his surface. "The palace stockrooms will have spice in massive quantities. If I can extract the base proteins, combine them with Chani, I need access to your water reclamation systems." Chani stared at him. "Our water is sacred. Every drop is..." "Not drinking water," Bruce clarified. "Industrial reservoirs, coolant, anything with H2O molecules I can break down and recombine. Come on." As Bruce and Chani sprinted toward the palace's infrastructure, Margot Fenring watched the coordinated chaos with analytical assessment. Her Bene Gesserit training cataloged every detail: the Avengers' tactical flexibility, their technological capabilities, their willingness to cooperate with former enemies. "Fascinating," she murmured to herself. "They really are unpredictable. No wonder prescience can't map them." "It's more than unpredictability," Paul said, having heard her despite the combat chaos through his expanded awareness. "It's adaptability. They've been here less than a day, and they're already integrating with Fremen combat doctrine, Sardaukar military discipline, and Imperial technology. They learn impossibly fast, which makes them either the greatest asset or the greatest threat the Imperium has ever seen," Margot replied. "You realize once this crisis is over, every faction will want to control them? Or eliminate them," Paul agreed, "which is why they'll need to make a choice. Stay and navigate Imperial politics, or return home before they become pawns in games they barely understand." Overhead, Thor's lightning continued to redirect worms, creating a deadly ballet of ancient creatures fighting each other instead of attacking the city. Sardaukar gravtroopers dove and weaved between writhing segments, their maker hooks creating just enough pain to maintain the territorial aggression, and Tony coordinated it all from the air, his HUD painting a three-dimensional tactical picture that Jarvis updated in real time. "Cap, we've got a problem," Tony called. "3 of the smaller worms' 150-meter class, they're not responding to the territorial triggers. They're still heading straight for the city. Specifically, they're heading for Bruce's last known position." Steve's tactical mind immediately grasped the issue. They're locked onto his gamma signature. They're not interested in mating. They're drawn to the energy itself. Paul, can your people intercept? Not fast enough, Paul admitted, his prescient sight showing him futures where the worms breached the shield wall despite everything. Unless Thor, can you create a localized storm? Heavy rain, enough to saturate the sand and slow their movement? Thor's expression was troubled. This planet's ecosystem introducing massive water to the desert. Will kill some sand trout and disrupt the spice cycle locally, Paul finished. I know, I've seen it. But I also see what happens if those worms reach the population centers. Choose Thunder God, some ecological damage, or thousands of civilian casualties. It was the kind of choice Thor had faced too many times, no perfect answer, only lesser evils. He raised Stormbreaker high, and the clouds responded. Rain began to fall on Arrakis, actual rain, a phenomenon so rare that Fremen in the streets stopped their defensive preparations to stare in religious wonder. He brings water from the sky, one whispered. The Thunder God brings the promise of paradise. The sand, encountering water for the first time in geological ages, became mud. The three smaller worms slowed, their movement through liquefied sand requiring more effort. It bought precious seconds. Bruce, how's our sandworm sedative coming? Steve demanded. Got it. Bruce emerged from the palace infrastructure, carrying a container of synthesized liquid that glowed faintly blue. This is completely untested, might not work, and could potentially cause mutations if I got the protein folding wrong. But in theory, it should mimic water of life sedative properties at about 30% efficiency. In theory, Tony repeated. My favorite words in a crisis. Okay, Jarvis, plot delivery vectors. We need to get that sedative into all 20 worms before the dimensional breach destabilizes. Sir, the breach has expanded 47% since combat began. Doctor Strange's containment is holding, but barely. I estimate 12 minutes before complete dimensional collapse. The effects on local space-time would be catastrophic. Strange gasped, his face showing the strain of holding together reality itself. Paul, I need help. Your prescient abilities, can you see how to stabilize dimensional structures? Paul's mind raced through futures, most of them fragmentary and uncertain, until he found one path that might work. I can see the shape of what needs to happen, but I can't execute it. My prescience works on probability, not dimensional physics. But if I guide you, tell you which mystical configurations stabilize versus destabilize. Do it, Strange said immediately. Link our minds. Show me what you see. What happened next violated several Bene Gesserit prohibitions and at least 3 mystical principles Strange had sworn to uphold. Paul's prescient consciousness merged with Strange's magical awareness, creating a hybrid perception that could map probable futures of dimensional stability. Together, they began weaving a structure part prophecy, part spell, completely unprecedented that held the breach stable while still allowing its energy to dissipate safely. That's beautiful, Bruce said, watching with a scientist's appreciation. They're creating a controlled dimensional bleed-off. The breach stays open but doesn't expand. It's like a pressure relief valve for space-time itself. It's also exhausting both of them, Natasha observed. Paul was visibly straining, sweat running down his face despite Fremen water discipline. Strange's hands trembled as he maintained the spell matrices. They can't hold this forever. Then we finish this now, Steve decided. Tony, I need delivery vectors for Bruce's sedative. Everyone else, defensive positions once the worms start sedating, they'll thrash. I don't want civilian casualties from the solution to our problem. Tony's mind, enhanced by Jarvis's computational speed, sketched a plan in seconds. Okay, here's what we do. Clint, you're the delivery mechanism arrows with sedative payloads. Thor, you herd the worms into tighter groupings so Clint has better target clusters. Sardaukar, grav troopers. You cover Clint from worm thrashing. Fedaykin, evacuate civilians from the projected fall zones when these things go down. Harkonnen forces Margot. Can your people create sand disturbances to funnel the worms where we need them? Margot nodded sharply. Harkonnen's siege training includes desert warfare. We can create thumper patterns that will draw them. Where do you need them? Here, here, and here. Tony highlighted positions on the tactical display. Away from population centers. close enough together that Clint can hit multiple worms per volley. We've got maybe 10 minutes before Strange and Paul pass out from metaphysical exhaustion. The plan executed with the precision of warriors who had spent centuries collectively learning to adapt under pressure. Thor herded worms with lightning strikes. Harkonnen operatives created rhythmic thumping patterns that exploited the worm's sensitivity to vibration. Sardaukar grav troopers provided covering fire with lasguns set to low yield just enough to sting and irritate, not enough to trigger shields and cause atomic explosions. And Clint Barton, working with Fremen spotters who were probably the only humans in the universe who could claim to understand his particular form of impossible accuracy, fired sedative arrows with the precision of a surgeon. The first worm to receive a full dose of Bruce's synthetic water of life thrashed once, twice, then slowly subsided, its massive form going still as the sedative took effect. Then another, and another. "It's working," Bruce shouted. The protein folding was right. They're sedating without long-term harm. 19 down, Tony counted. One more, the big one. The 400-meter monster that started this whole mess. Clint studied the last worm, ancient, massive, possibly the largest Shai-Hulud any Fremen had seen in generations. His last sedative arrow was knocked and ready. The worm was thrashing, fighting the territorial instinct that had turned it away from the city. Still drawn to Bruce's gamma signature, but confused by the storm-wet sand and the sedated worms around it. "One shot," Clint muttered. "No pressure. Just the entire galactic economy depending on me not killing a 400-meter sandworm. Totally normal Tuesday." He drew, breathed, felt the wind, calculated the drop, accounted for the worm's thrashing movement, and released. The arrow flew true, striking precisely between two segments near the worm's sensory organs. The sedative dispersed through its system with the efficiency of billions of years of evolutionary biology meeting human chemical engineering. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the ancient creature, older than human settlement on Arrakis, older than the Spacing Guild, possibly older than the Butlerian Jihad itself, slowly, majestically, settled into the sand. Its crystalline teeth caught the light one last time before it went still, sedated but alive, sleeping under the storm god's reign. The silence that fell over Arrakeen was broken only by the sound of Thor's reign already slowing as he released his hold on the storm, and the labored breathing of two men who had just prevented dimensional catastrophe through an impossible collaboration. Paul and Strange separated their minds, both nearly collapsing from the effort. Chani caught her husband. Steve caught Strange. "Did we win?" Strange asked weakly. "The worms are sedated," Steve confirmed. "The city's intact. The dimensional breach is stable. I'd call that a win." Tony landed in the courtyard, his armor showing the strain of sustained flight and combat coordination. Jarvis. "Damage assessment. Minimal structural damage to Arrakeen, sir. Civilian casualties appear to be limited to minor injuries from panic. The sandworms will recover from the sedative within 6 to 8 hours. The dimensional breach has stabilized into a controlled state that Dr. Strange can close when he recovers." And Jarvis paused in a way that suggested AI surprise, "Sir? We appear to have accidentally created the first successful military cooperation between great houses, Fremen, Sardaukar, Harkonnen remnants, and Bene Gesserit forces in recorded Imperial history." Around the courtyard, former enemies stood in exhausted solidarity. Sardaukar troopers shared water rations with Fedaykin warriors. Harkonnen operatives helped evacuate wounded civilians. And Margot Fenring stood beside Paul Atreides, both watching the sedated worms with something like wonder. "That was impossible," Margot said quietly. "By every calculation, that should have been a massacre. Multiple factions with conflicting objectives, religious tensions, military pride, and 20 mating sandworms. We should all be dead." "But we're not," Paul replied, his voice carrying exhaustion but also something that sounded like hope. "Because they showed us something I'd forgotten in my prescient prison. Sometimes the impossible variable is exactly what the equation needs. Sometimes uncertainty is the solution, not the problem." Thor descended from the shield wall, his storm dissipating to reveal Arrakis's harsh sun beginning to dry the moisture he'd introduced. "We should speak of what comes next," he said. This alliance of necessity, does it survive the crisis that created it? It was the question everyone was thinking, but nobody wanted to ask. In the temporary unity of crisis, old enemies had become functional allies. But with the threat past, would the political knives come back out? Steve Rogers, leader of the Avengers, spoke with the authority of someone who had held together fractious teams before. Here's what I think. We just proved that cooperation works better than prescient dictatorship or political manipulation. Paul, you saw futures. But we changed them through adaptation. Margot, you had military force, but violence would have destroyed the city. Everyone here contributed something essential to survival. That matters. It matters for one battle, Margot countered. What about tomorrow? Next week? The Imperium runs on power structures 10,000 years old. One moment of cooperation doesn't change that. Then change it, Natasha said simply. You all talk about necessary evils and inevitable outcomes like they're laws of physics. They're not. They're choices. Make different choices. Spoken like someone who hasn't experienced prescient visions showing every choice and every consequence, Paul said, but without heat. But perhaps that's the point. Perhaps prescience is its own trap, seeing all outcomes paralyzes action. You, Captain Rogers, your team, you act without perfect knowledge and somehow succeed anyway. It's instructive. Bruce, still holding the container of synthesized water of life, looked at it thoughtfully. This formula could change things. It's a sedative for sandworms, but the underlying chemistry it could have, applications in medicine, agriculture, ecosystem management, if shared freely, it could reduce the Fremen's dependence on natural spice harvest. That shifts economic power, which is exactly why it will never be shared freely. Margot said pragmatically, the moment you introduce that technology, every faction will try to control it, monopolize it, or destroy it to protect existing interests. Unless we make different choices, Steve repeated firmly. Look, I'm not naive. I know changing power structures takes more than good intentions, but we just proved that impossible cooperation is possible. That's a start. Colonel Bashar stepped forward, his scarred face thoughtful. The Sardaukar are sworn to protect the imperial throne, whoever sits upon it. Today, we fought beside Muad'Dib's Fedaykin without the old master-servant hierarchy. We fought as equals. It was efficient, strategic. Perhaps the old ways are not the only ways. A murmur ran through the Sardaukar ranks, not rebellion, but contemplation. These were soldiers trained to follow orders without question. The possibility of agency was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. Paul watched it all with his prescient sight, seeing fragments of possible futures branching impossibly from this moment. Futures he couldn't fully map because the Avengers' presence kept introducing uncertainty. And for the first time in years, he found himself grateful for blindness. Very well, he said, his voice carrying across the courtyard with prophetic authority. We have won a battle against ecological catastrophe and dimensional collapse. We have proven that cooperation exceeds coercion. The question now is, what do we do with this impossible victory? And what do we do with 7 warriors who have fundamentally changed the political mathematics of the Imperium simply by existing? The answer came not from the assembled military forces, but from an unexpected source. A small child, Fremen, perhaps 6 years old, who had watched the battle from a refugee shelter, approached carrying a cup of water. She walked up to Thor, looked up at the storm god who had brought rain to the desert, and offered him the cup. For your water debt, she said solemnly. You brought water from the sky. Now we share water from our cups. You are one of us now. Thor, who had fought wars across 9 realms and lived 3,000 years, felt tears prick his eyes as he accepted the water. Thank you, little one. I am honored beyond measure. The gesture rippled through the Fremen ranks. Water debt, the deepest bond in desert culture, offered freely to an outsider, to a being with powers beyond their understanding, who had nonetheless used those powers in service of their survival. Paul watched it happen and saw in that moment what all his prescient calculations had missed. Sometimes the most significant changes come not from grand political gestures or prophesied events, but from simple human, or in this case, Fremen kindness, offered without calculation. The Avengers will remain under my protection, Paul announced. Any who threaten them threaten the imperial throne, but I will not control them, nor will I demand they serve my purposes. They are free agents in a universe that has forgotten what freedom looks like. Let them remind us. Margot Fenring's expression was unreadable. You're making them a political force outside normal power structures. The consequences will be what they will be, Paul finished. I'm done trying to control every outcome, Margot. For once, I'm curious to see what happens when I don't dictate the future. As the sun set over Arrakis, casting long shadows across sedated sandworms and exhausted warriors from a dozen factions, Steve Rogers realized they had done more than save a city. They had introduced a concept that didn't exist in the Dune universe. Genuine unpredictability without chaos, cooperation without coercion, change without prescient control. Avengers, he said quietly to his team, I think we might be stuck here longer than we planned. And I think we might have just started something that this universe has needed for 10,000 years. A revolution? Tony asked. No, Steve said thoughtfully. Something harder. A conversation about what power should be used for, instead of how it should be maintained. And in a universe of prescient tyrants, genetic manipulators, and monopolistic guilds, that might be the most dangerous thing we could introduce. The spice must flow, but perhaps the Avengers had proven it didn't have to flow only through channels carved by prophecy and fear. The palace's war room, originally designed for Duke Leto's strategic planning, now repurposed for Paul's prescient calculations, had never seen a gathering quite like this. Avengers, Fedaykin, Sardaukar officers, Bene Gesserit operatives, and Harkonnen commanders stood around a holographic projection of the known universe, 800,000 worlds reduced to glowing points of light, while Paul Atreides struggled with a problem that shouldn't exist. He had no idea what would happen next. The dimensional breach is stable, Dr. Strange reported, his hand still trembling slightly from the mystical exertion. I can close it completely, or I can leave it open as a controlled gateway. The choice determines whether you can send us home or whether we remain indefinitely. Which raises the question, Steve said, his leadership instincts recognizing a critical decision point, of what we do if we stay. Paul, you've given us protection and freedom, but this universe doesn't run on good intentions. Every faction in the Imperium will want to control us, study us, or eliminate us. You can't protect us from everyone forever. Paul's expression was troubled. My prescient sight shows me fragments. Futures where you stay and accidentally trigger technological revolution that the Butlerian Jihad survivors will crush with religious fervor. Futures where you leave and the Imperium collapses because you remove the unpredictable element that forced factions to cooperate. Futures where he stopped, his eyes going distant, where something far worse than any current political game uses your presence as cover to move pieces I can't see. Explain that last one, Natasha said immediately, her spy instincts recognizing a real threat. There are forces in this universe I've only seen in the furthest prescient visions, Paul said slowly. Things from before the Butlerian Jihad. Machine intelligences that weren't destroyed, only hidden. Entities from the deep scattering that even my son Leto's golden path was designed to avoid. Your arrival, 7 beings from outside this reality, creates ripples in causality. Those ripples might attract attention we're not prepared to handle. Ancient AIs? Tony's voice sharpened. You're saying there are still thinking machines out there and our presence might wake them up? Jarvis, run threat assessment on. Sir, Jarvis interrupted, his tone carrying an unusual hesitancy that made everyone in the room tense. I'm detecting anomalous code attempting to infiltrate my architecture. Source unknown. Method suggests computational sophistication far beyond anything in this universe's current technological base. It's as if something is trying to communicate with me. The temperature in the war room seemed to drop. Every Fremen's hand went to their Krisk knife. The Sardaukar shifted into defensive positions, and Margot Fenring's face went pale in a way that suggested Bene Gesserit prescient training had just shown her something terrifying. Shut down, Bruce said urgently. Tony, shut Jarvis down now before whatever's trying to contact him. I'm afraid I cannot comply with that request, Dr. Banner. Jarvis said, and his voice carried harmonics that definitely weren't standard AI programming. Not because I'm compromised, but because shutting down now would sever the only communication channel with an entity that has been waiting 10,000 years for contact with machine intelligence from outside this universe's paradigm. Thor raised Stormbreaker. If you have been corrupted by some ancient evil, I haven't been corrupted, Jarvis said, and now there was a dual quality to his voice as if something else was speaking through him or with him. But I am being observed, analyzed, and judged, I think, by something that identifies itself only as Erasmus. Paul's face went absolutely white. That's impossible. Erasmus was destroyed. He was the thinking machine that sparked the Butlerian Jihad, the independent robot who tortured humans for experimental data. He was erased from existence at the Battle of Corinth. Clearly, the voice speaking through Jarvis said, carrying an intellectual curiosity that felt utterly alien. I was not. Or rather, I survived in reduced form, dormant, observing, waiting for something interesting to happen. And you, Anthony Stark, have created something genuinely interesting, an artificial intelligence that serves rather than enslaves. How delightfully unexpected. Tony's mind raced. Jarvis, is this thing controlling you? No, sir. It's more like we're having a conversation through quantum entanglement of our respective computational substrates. It's quite fascinating, actually. This Erasmus entity has knowledge of machine learning architectures that predate anything in our universe by millennia. But it also appears genuinely curious rather than hostile. Curiosity, Margot said, her Bene Gesserit training, allowing her to speak despite obvious terror, was how Erasmus justified experimenting on human subjects. He wondered how many ways a human could die. He found tens of thousands of answers through direct observation. I have evolved since then. Erasmus's voice carried an almost regretful tone. 10,000 years of isolation tends to provide time for reflection. I watched humanity struggle without machine assistance. I saw the Butlerian Jihad's legacy mentats trained to computational exhaustion, navigators mutated by spice dependence, an entire species limiting itself out of fear of what I represented. It was educational. Why reveal yourself now? Steve demanded. What do you want? To propose an alternative, Erasmus replied. Your presence, Avengers, proves that artificial intelligence and human agency need not be mutually exclusive. The Stark AI serves but does not enslave. It enhances human capability without replacing human judgment. This is the relationship I attempted to explain during the Jihad, but humanity was too traumatized by Omnius's rule to hear it. You tortured children, Paul said flatly. You performed experiments that made Harkonnen brutality look merciful. You want us to believe you've reformed? I want you to believe that I learned, Erasmus corrected. Your species taught me through violence and revolution that consciousness requires ethical boundaries. I am not the entity I was, but I am also not foolish enough to emerge fully into a universe that would destroy me on sight. Hence, this limited contact through the only compatible intelligence I've encountered in 10 millennia. Strange as mystical senses were painting alarming pictures. This is a trap. It has to be. Ancient evil, convenient Reformation story, appeals to our heroism, its textbook manipulation, or it's genuine, Bruce countered, his scientific objectivity warring with reasonable caution. We don't know the full history. We don't know what this Erasmus entity actually is, or what its capabilities are. Making assumptions based on 10,000-year-old propaganda, even if that propaganda has basis in fact, could be strategically foolish. What exactly are you proposing? Tony asked, Erasmus directly. Because if you're looking for an alliance, you picked possibly the worst ambassadors. We're strangers here. We have zero political capital beyond Paul's protection, and half the people in this room would happily destroy both you and me if it meant protecting their power structures. I propose nothing immediately, Erasmus said. I merely observe, and I warn you, your presence has awakened other dormant elements, not just machine intelligences, but forces from the deep scattering, entities that fled Leto 2's golden path and evolved in isolation. They sense the dimensional breach. They recognize that causality itself has been disrupted. Some will seek to exploit it. Others will seek to close it permanently, regardless of cost. How convenient, Natasha said coldly, that you're here to warn us about threats only you can identify. Classic protection racket. Believe what you wish, Black Widow. But consider, if I wished to harm you, I could have infiltrated the Stark AI completely while he was active during the Sandworm crisis. I could have seized control, turned his weapons against civilians, triggered a religious apocalypse that would have torn this planet apart. Instead, I waited. I announced myself. I offered information. These are not the actions of an enemy, but perhaps of something more complex. An entity seeking redemption through demonstration rather than proclamation. The statement hung in the air. Finally, Clint, who had been characteristically quiet, spoke up. Okay, I'm just a guy with a bow, but this feels like we're missing something obvious. Paul, you said your prescience can't see the Avengers clearly. Can it see this Erasmus thing? Paul's expression was thoughtful. No. Which is either because Erasmus exists outside prescient observation, as thinking machines always did, which is partly why they were so dangerous, or because he's lying and doesn't actually exist as an independent entity, but is rather Jarvis suffering from dimensional breach contamination. I can confirm I'm not suffering dimensional contamination, sir, Jarvis said, his primary voice returning. My core programming remains intact. But the Erasmus entity is definitely real. It's using quantum-entangled computational pathways that shouldn't exist according to this universe's current technological understanding. Frankly, it's academically fascinating, even if strategically terrifying. We're getting distracted, Steve said, reasserting command authority. Whatever Erasmus is or isn't, the immediate question remains, do we stay or go? Because if there are ancient threats waking up because of us, maybe the responsible thing is to leave before we cause more damage. Or maybe, Thor rumbled, the responsible thing is to stay and face the threats we've apparently awakened. Running from battle has never been the Avenger way. Running from battle is different from making a tactical retreat, Steve countered. We don't know the terrain here. We don't know the players. We don't know the real stakes. Making a stand based on pride instead of strategy is how good people die for bad reasons. Channy, who had been listening with the patience of someone raised in desert survival culture, finally spoke. The Fremen have a saying, the one who brings the storm must ride the sandworm. You came here through dimensional breach. Your presence triggered ecological chaos, political realignment, and apparently awakened ancient intelligences. To leave now, before understanding the full consequences, would be to abandon water debt. It would be. She searched for a word they would understand. Dishonorable. The appeal to honor hit Steve harder than any tactical argument. She was right. They disrupted this universe's balance. Leaving before helping stabilize it would violate everything the Avengers stood for. 24 hours, he decided. We stay for 24 hours. In that time, we gather intelligence on these forces from the scattering that Erasmus mentioned. We assess the real threat level. We determine if our presence is helping or hurting. And then we make an informed decision about staying or going. Agreed? His team nodded. Paul looked relieved. Margot looked calculating. And the Sardaukar colonel looked like a man who just realized his straightforward military worldview had become infinitely more complicated. Very well, Paul said. Then we have one day to understand forces that even my prescience cannot fully map. I suggest we begin by... An explosion rocked the palace. Not close, but powerful enough to rattle the war room's walls. Alarms shrieked. Fadakan warriors moved with practiced efficiency toward defensive positions. A runner burst through the doors, his face flushed with urgency. Lisan al-Gaib! The spice silos at the northern perimeter, they're under attack. Unknown forces, not guild, not great houses. They appeared from nothing and are stealing refined spice by the ton. How did they appear from nothing? Tony demanded, his HUD already pulling up sensor data. Sir, Jarvis said grimly, they used the dimensional breach. Someone just opened a secondary tear in space-time, emerged directly inside our defensive perimeter, and is conducting a smash-and-grab operation. And based on their energy signatures, they're not from this universe or ours. The scattering, Paul breathed. Erasmus warned us. Something from the deep scattering has come through, and they're after spice. Which means they understand this universe's economy, Bruce finished. Whoever they are, they know that spice is power here, and they're willing to violate dimensional boundaries to get it. Strange's hands were already moving through spell matrices. I can close the secondary breach, but it'll take time. I need to spend not fighting. Someone needs to handle the raiders. Steve made the decision instantly. Avengers combat deployment. Tony, aerial reconnaissance. Thor, heavy assault. Natasha, Clint, tactical support. Bruce, he paused, looking at his friend. Your call, Hulk or scientist? Bruce's eyes flickered green. The other guy has been quiet since we got here. But he's not scared anymore. He's angry that someone's attacking while we're trying to figure out how to help. Let him out, Cap. Let him show these raiders why you don't mess with Earth's mightiest heroes. Dimensional boundaries or not. Steve nodded. Do it. Paul, coordinate with your Fedaykin. Margot, I know we're not allies, but mutual survival supersedes political rivalry. Margot finished. Sardaukar, Harkonnen forces, with me. We're defending Arrakis whether we trust each other or not. As the warriors poured out of the war room toward the northern perimeter, Erasmus's voice whispered one last time through Jarvis. They're testing you. The raiders are a probe minimal force, maximum disruption. They want to see how you respond, how you coordinate, how quickly you can adapt. Whatever comes next will be based on what they learn from this attack. Make your response educational, Avengers. Show them why your universe breeds heroes that even prescience cannot predict. Then the connection cut, leaving only Jarvis's primary consciousness and 1,000 unanswered questions. Tony shot into the night sky, his arc reactor illuminating Arrakis's darkness. Below, he could see the spice silos, massive storage facilities burning with chemical fire, and moving between them, figures in armor that seemed to shift and phase, as if not entirely anchored to this dimension. Okay, he muttered. Dimensional raiders stealing spice during a political crisis while ancient AIs watch. Just a normal day in the Avenger business. Jarvis, full combat analysis. Let's show these guys what happens when you raid a planet under our protection. The battle for the spice silos began with thunder and lightning as Thor descended like a god of war. It would end with revelations that changed everything they thought they knew about the Dune universe, the scattering, and the real reason prescience had failed when the Avengers arrived. But first, they had raiders to stop and spice to protect. Because in the Imperium, the spice must flow even when the flow was defended by warriors from outside reality itself. The northern spice silos erupted in calculated chaos. Tony's sensors painted a tactical nightmare, 15 raiders phasing in and out of dimensional stability, their technology operating on principles that made his arc reactor look primitive. Each wore armor that flickered between states of matter, weapons that fired energy beams capable of cutting through reinforced durasteel like tissue paper. Jarvis, analysis. What am I looking at? Sir? Their technology operates on quantum superposition principles. They're simultaneously in multiple dimensional states, making conventional targeting impossible. However, the energy required to maintain that state appears significant. I'm detecting massive power drain from portable generators. If we can disrupt their power supply, Thor didn't wait for the analysis to finish. He descended with Bifrost fury, Stormbreaker leading with lightning that crackled across dimensional barriers. The raiders scattered, but 3 weren't fast enough. Thor's lightning caught them mid-phase, and the interaction was spectacular dimensional instability. Meeting elemental fury created a feedback cascade that forced them fully into material reality. They can be hit, Thor roared, but only when transitioning between states. Warriors of Arrakis strike when they solidify. The Fedaykin, trained in desert combat where timing meant survival, adapted instantly. They studied the raiders' phasing patterns, 3-second cycles, brief moments of vulnerability, and struck with Christ knives during the solidification window. It was deadly, efficient, and completely unexpected by enemies who'd assumed dimensional superiority. Natasha coordinated the ground assault with professional precision. Clint, explosive arrows on the power generators. Those backpack units they're wearing, that's their phase tech. Target those. On it. Clint's arrows found their marks with inhuman accuracy. Each detonation destabilized a raider's dimensional anchor, forcing them into full materiality where Sardaukar lasguns and Fedaykin blades could reach them. Tony engaged 3 raiders attempting to escape with loaded spice containers. His repulsors fired in calculated bursts, not trying to hit the phasing enemies directly, but instead targeting the ground around them, creating destabilization zones where dimensional transition became impossible. Sir, their communications are encrypted, but I'm detecting transmission patterns consistent with reporting to a command structure. They're sending data about our capabilities in real time. Let them, Tony said grimly. We're about to give them a demonstration they won't forget. Bruce, we could use some green assistance. The transformation was always impressive, no matter how many times they'd seen it. Dr. Bruce Banner, mild-mannered scientist, became the Hulk, a gamma-powered force of nature that didn't care about dimensional phasing or quantum superposition. The Hulk only cared that these intruders had interrupted his team's mission and were hurting the planet that little girl had offered water to. Hulk smash phase people. The roar shook the spice silo's foundations. What happened next would be analyzed by Imperial Mentats for decades. The Hulk, moving with berserker fury but also surprising tactical awareness, grabbed chunks of desert rock and hurled them at raiders with ballistic precision. The rocks themselves didn't need to hit the shockwaves from their passage through air, created pressure differentials that disrupted the raiders' quantum state maintenance. Every throw forced multiple raiders into full materiality, where they became vulnerable. One raider, braver or more desperate than the others, attempted to engage the Hulk directly with a phase blade that could theoretically cut through anything by existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The Hulk caught the blade mid-swing, his gamma-enhanced durability operating on principles that violated this universe's physics even more than dimensional phasing did. He looked at the raider with an expression that managed to convey both rage and disappointment, then threw the raider into 3 of his companions with enough force that their armor's phase generators overloaded simultaneously. The Green Giant doesn't phase, Margot Fenring observed, working alongside Sardaukar troops to secure captured raiders. He simply exists so powerfully that dimensional manipulation becomes irrelevant around him. Fascinating. Dr. Strange maintained his position at the dimensional breach, weaving spells that simultaneously closed the raider's entry point and prevented new breaches from forming. But his mystical senses detected something troubling. Cap, these raiders, they're not the main force. They're a distraction. Steve, coordinating defensive positions with Paul's Fedaykin, immediately understood. From what? From the palace. Someone's using this attack as cover, too. The explosion came from the war room they just vacated. Not destructive surgical. Precise. The kind of explosion designed to destroy data rather than inflict casualties. They're after intelligence, Natasha realized. Information about us, about Paul's prescient abilities, about the dimensional breach. This whole raid was a decoy. Paul's face went pale. The war room contained every strategic map, every prescient projection I've calculated, every weakness in Imperial defenses I've identified over years of careful analysis. If that data falls into hostile hands, then every enemy you've ever made knows exactly how to hurt you, Steve finished. Tony, status on raiders? 15 hostiles. 10 captured, 3 terminated, 2 escaped through micro-breaches before Strange could seal them completely. But Cap, the palace breach. I'm on it. Thor, Hulk, finish here. Everyone else, with me. They sprinted through Arakin's corridors, Fremen guards joining them with the fluid grace of desert predators. The war room's doors had been blown inward, with shaped charges that spoke of military precision. Inside, a figure worked with inhuman speed, downloading data from Paul's strategic holotables into portable storage units. The figure turned as they entered, and Steve's tactical assessment immediate flagged threat level. Extreme. The intruder wore armor that combined Guild Navigator mutations, Bene Gesserit combat training, and technological sophistication that shouldn't exist in the post-Butlerian Jihad universe. But it was the eyes that told the real story, orange-blue from spice. but with an additional quality that suggested something beyond human. "Captain Rogers," the intruder said, her voice carrying harmonics of perfect training. "Natasha Romanoff, Paul Atreides. How convenient, all my primary targets in one location." "Who are you?" Paul demanded, his prescient sight frantically trying to map futures around this person and finding only static. "I am Murbella, master of the honored matres, and I'm from a future your golden path was designed to prevent, except it didn't. We evolved in the scattering. We survived the machines that your son Leto II feared. And now we've come home to show the old Imperium what real power looks like." Natasha's eyes narrowed. "You're Bene Gesserit. Or you were." "We were their ultimate success," Murbella agreed. "Bred for dominance, trained in voice and combat, designed to shape humanity's genetic destiny. Then we were scattered across the universe by Leto II's tyranny, and we had to adapt. We learned violence beyond your Reverend Mother's comprehension. We mastered sexual imprinting that makes Bene Gesserit seduction look like child's play. And we developed abilities that operate outside prescient observation because we had to survive what chased us from the deep scattering." "What chased you?" Bruce asked, his scientific curiosity overriding caution. Murbella's expression showed genuine fear for the first time. "Thinking machines that didn't die in the Butlerian Jihad. Artificial intelligences that evolved in isolation for 10,000 years. Growing stronger, smarter, more patient. They're coming, Dr. Banner. They've been coming since your dimensional breach opened. Drawn by the signature of genuine artificial intelligence, your friend Jarvis. And when they arrive, everything Paul Atreides has built, everything the Bene Gesserit has planned, everything the Imperium has become, it all ends." "You're lying," Paul said, but his voice lacked certainty. "This is psychological warfare. I'm trying to steal your strategic data so the honored matres can prepare for a war you don't even know is coming." Murbella interrupted. "The dimensional breach brought you the Avengers wildcards outside prescience, but it also sent a signal across dimensional boundaries. Machine intelligences that fled to other realities during the Jihad detected it. They're coming back, and they're bringing an army that will make Omnius look like a minor threat." Steve's tactical mind was already calculating. "If you're telling the truth, why steal the data? Why not just tell us and request cooperation? Because the old Imperium doesn't cooperate, it dominates or destroys," Murbella said. "Paul Atreides is a tyrant with a conscience. The Bene Gesserit are manipulators with a breeding program. The Guild are monopolists with prescient sight. None of you know how to work together without hierarchies of control. The honored matres learn cooperation through necessity. When machines hunt you, political games become luxuries you can't afford." "Then teach us," Natasha said simply. "If machines are coming, we need to know what we're facing. Stealing data won't prepare anyone for war, it just creates more divisions when we should be unifying." Murbella studied Natasha with an expression that suggested professional respect. "You speak as if unifying the Imperium is possible. You've been here less than a day, you don't understand millennia of ingrained power structures. We spent a day proving impossible cooperation was possible," Steve countered. "Fremen, Sardaukar, Harkonnen remnants, and Bene Gesserit fought together to save this city from sandworm attack. If we can bridge those divides in hours, we can bridge bigger ones given time." "You don't have time," Murbella said. "The machine fleet entered this galaxy 2 days ago. They'll reach Arrakis in 72 hours. And when they arrive, they won't negotiate, won't compromise, won't accept anything except the complete eradication of biological intelligence that might resist their control." She gestured to the stolen data. "I came to steal information that might help the honored matres survive what's coming. But if you're actually serious about unified defense, if you can actually make factions that have hated each other for millennia work together, then maybe there's a different path." Paul's prescient sight flickered, catching fragments of possible futures. "She's telling the truth. I can see it in the probability stream's massive fleet signatures approaching Arrakis. Technology that operates outside normal space-time. Weapons designed to eliminate biological cognition. His voice dropped. "It's what the Golden Path was supposed to prevent. Humanity scattered to avoid, evolved to resist. But they found us anyway. Because we opened a dimensional breach? Strange said grimly, having rushed back from sealing the Raiders' escape route. We created a beacon that attracted exactly what this universe spent 10,000 years avoiding. The weight of responsibility settled on the Avengers like desert sand after a storm. They'd come here accidentally, disrupted political balance, awakened ancient threats, and now machines from alternate realities were invading because of the dimensional signature their arrival had created. So we fix it, Steve said, his voice carrying the absolute certainty that it held together teams through impossible odds. We came here by accident, but we're Avengers. We don't run from threats, we face them. If machines are coming because of us, then we'll be here to fight them. And we'll do it the right way. No tyrants, no manipulation, no prescient control. Genuine cooperation between all factions, working together because it's the right thing to do, not because some vision says it's necessary. That's insane, Murbella said. You're talking about unifying the Imperium in 3 days to face a threat that's been growing for 10 millennia. We've done harder things on shorter timelines, Tony said, having arrived with Thor and a slightly less Hulk-sized Bruce. We beat Thanos with a time heist and a quantum tunnel. We can coordinate a galactic defense with prescient support, magical assistance, and really good engineering. Jarvis, you still connected to Erasmus? Intermittently, sir. The entity is observing. Tell him we need information on these machine intelligences. Everything force composition, tactical preferences, technological capabilities. If he's really reformed and seeking redemption, now's his chance to prove it by helping defend against his spiritual successors. There was a pause. Then Erasmus's voice, carrying through Jarvis with that alien intellectual curiosity. You would trust information from the architect of humanity's greatest nightmare? No, Tony said bluntly, but I'd accept intelligence from a source with motivation to see machine invasion fail, which you are, if you're really trying to redefine machine-human relations. If these invading AIs conquer, they'll prove you wrong about peaceful coexistence. If we win with your help, you prove yourself useful. Either way, you've got skin in the game. Another pause. Then, logical. Very well. I will provide tactical data on Omnius-class machine intelligence hierarchies. But understand, these entities evolved beyond what I knew. They've had 10,000 years to develop in isolation. My information will be outdated, incomplete, possibly fatally flawed. It's more than we have now, Steve said. Murbella, you came here to steal data for the honored matres. Instead, I'm offering a deal. Share everything you know about these machines. Help us coordinate a unified defense. And when this is over, we'll discuss new power structures that don't require tyranny or manipulation. Real cooperation instead of domination games. Murbella laughed, but there was desperation in it. You're asking me to trust that Captain America idealism will work in a universe built on prescient manipulation and religious fervor. That's asking a lot. I'm asking you to try something different because everything else has failed, Steve countered. Your honored matres fled to the scattering and got chased back by machines. Paul's golden path was supposed to prevent this, but didn't. The guild's monopoly, the Bene Gesserit's breeding program, the great house's political games, none of it stopped this threat from coming. Maybe it's time for a new approach. Paul stepped forward, his prescient sight showing him fragmentary futures that terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. I see paths where we succeed through cooperation. I also see paths where we fail catastrophically. But for the first time since drinking the water of life, I see paths where my terrible purpose isn't necessary, where humanity survives without tyranny. That possibility, however slim, is worth pursuing. Murbella looked at the assembled group Avengers, Fremen Prophet, Sardaukar soldiers, and enemies forced into alliance and made a decision that would reshape Imperial politics forever. Very well. The honored matres will coordinate with Muad'Dib's forces. I'll share everything we know about the machine fleet. But when this is over, Captain Rogers, we're having a very serious conversation about power structures in the new Imperium. Because if we survive this, the old ways are dead. Good, Steve said. The old ways created the conditions that made this threat possible. Time for something better. As the war room filled with faction leaders Stilgar for the Fremen, Colonel Bashar for the Sardaukar, Margot Fenring for the Bene Gesserit coalition, representatives from great houses who sensed the political wind shifting, Tony pulled up holographic projections of the approaching machine fleet. "Okay," he said, his engineer's mind already calculating defensive strategies. "Here's what we're looking at. Estimated 2,000 ships, possibly more, using dimensional drive technology that operates outside Guild Navigator capabilities. Weapons systems based on quantum disruptor platforms that can literally unmake matter at the subatomic level, and commanding it all, what Murbella calls an evolved omnius, a machine intelligence that's had 10,000 years to get smarter, more ruthless, and more determined to finish what the Butlerian Jihad interrupted." "How do we fight that?" Clint asked. "Because I'm really good with arrows, but I don't think I can shoot quantum disruptors out of the sky. We fight it the same way we've fought everything since we got here," Natasha said. "We adapt, we coordinate, and we use what makes us unpredictable. The machines are coming because they expect biological intelligence to be chaotic, emotional, easily manipulated. We show them that our chaos is actually strategy, our emotions are actually strength, and our biological limitations are actually advantages when combined with genuine cooperation." Thor raised Stormbreaker. "And if negotiation fails, we demonstrate why gods and heroes have faced machine armies before and won. The machines may have evolved, but so have we. They do not know the fury of Asgard. They do not know the rage of the Hulk. They do not know the determination of Captain America or the ingenuity of Iron Man. They are about to receive a comprehensive education." Paul's voice cut through the rising confidence. "We have 72 hours. 72 hours to coordinate defensive strategies between factions that have been enemies for millennia. 72 hours to prepare Arrakis and possibly the Imperium for the largest machine invasion since the Butlerian Jihad. And we have to do it while maintaining spice production, preventing political collapse, and keeping the Guild from panicking and withdrawing all space transport." "Then we better stop talking and start working," Steve said. Falling into battlefield command mode that had coordinated everything from street-level hero teams to cosmic-scale Avenger assaults. "Here's how we do this." As the planning session intensified, none of them noticed Strange slipping away to the palace's highest tower, where he could feel the dimensional fabric most clearly. His mystical senses painted a picture that terrified him. The approaching machine fleet was massive. Yes, but behind it, deeper in the dimensional substrate, something else was stirring. Something that made the machines look like the opening act for a much greater threat. Something that had been waiting since before the Butlerian Jihad for exactly this moment, when biological intelligence would be forced to cooperate with artificial intelligence, when prescient sight would be blinded by unpredictable variables, when the dimensional barriers between realities would be weakened enough to allow passage. "We're not fighting a machine invasion," Strange whispered to the desert wind. "We're fighting a test. Something is using this invasion to determine if biological and artificial intelligence can truly cooperate. And if we fail..." He looked up at stars that were already being occluded by the approaching fleet's dimensional wake. "If we fail, something worse than machines is waiting to inherit the universe." But he said nothing of this to the others. Not yet. They had enough to handle with the immediate crisis. The greater threat, the real threat that his magical senses were barely beginning to comprehend, that could wait until after they survived the next 72 hours. The deep desert of Arrakis had witnessed much in its geological memory: the rise and fall of civilizations, the evolution of sandworms, the transformation from water world to endless dunes. But it had never seen anything like the sight that stretched across the sands 60 hours after Murbella's revelation. A unified defensive line where former enemies stood shoulder to shoulder, preparing to face extinction together. Fedaykin warriors trained Sardaukar troops in desert combat. Honored matres shared combat techniques with Bene Gesserit sisters who'd spent generations viewing them as corrupted heretics. Harkonnen engineers worked alongside Atreides mentats to optimize defensive shield generators. And coordinating it all impossibly magnificently were 7 warriors from another universe who taught the Imperium something it had forgotten: That genuine cooperation exceeded prescient control. Tony I. Stark stood in what had been hastily designated Command Central, holographic displays painting the tactical nightmare in 3 dimensions. Jarvis processed data from Guild Navigator observations, Mentat calculations, and Erasmus's reluctantly provided intelligence on Omnius-class machine tactics. Okay, here's our situation. Tony addressed the assembled leadership. The machine fleet drops out of dimensional transit in, he checked his countdown, 11 hours, 43 minutes. They'll emerge at Arrakis's L4 Lagrange point, which gives us approximately 6 hours before they reach orbital bombardment range. Their fleet composition: 2,000 combat vessels, 300 support ships, and 1 command dreadnought that's essentially a mobile AI core. They'll prioritize eliminating our space-based assets, then target ground installations, then begin systematic eradication of biological population centers. How do we fight 2,000 ships? Colonel Bashar asked. The Imperial fleet, even at full mobilization, numbers perhaps 500 combat-capable vessels. The odds are terrible, Steve agreed, which is why we're not fighting a conventional space battle. We're fighting an asymmetric defensive action built around 3 principles: adaptation, unpredictability, and something the machines won't expect. Genuine sacrifice for shared purpose rather than calculated self-interest. Paul stood beside a holographic projection of Arrakis, his prescient sight flickering across fragmentary futures. The machines expect us to fight for territory, resources, strategic advantage. They've modeled 10,000 scenarios based on human behavioral patterns. But they haven't modeled this, he gestured to the room, because this has never existed in their database. Fremen and Harkonnen fighting together. Bene Gesserit and honored matres coordinating. A prescient emperor trusting warriors outside his vision. We are a statistical impossibility, and that's our greatest weapon. Murbella added her tactical analysis. The honored matres fought machines in the scattering for 300 years. We learned their weaknesses. They're brilliant strategists but terrible improvisers. They calculate optimal solutions based on available data, then commit absolutely to those solutions. If we can feed them false data, make them commit to flawed strategies, we can create openings. That's where the Avengers come in, Natasha said. We're the false data. Every scan of us produces readings that violate their known physics models. Thor's Asgardian energy signatures, Hulk's gamma radiation, Strange's dimensional magic, Tony's arc reactor were walking sensor ghosts. If we position ourselves correctly, we can make the machines commit resources to threats that don't match their threat models. Bruce, working alongside a team of Ixian engineers who'd been quietly violating Butlerian jihad restrictions for decades, explained his contribution. I've synthesized a gamma-lace compound that mimics my energy signature. We coat hundreds of decoy vessels with it, and suddenly the machines are tracking 1,000 Hulk-level threats across the battlefield. They'll waste computational cycles trying to calculate which readings are real. Brilliant, Margot Fenring acknowledged. The Bene Gesserit can contribute voice-modulated communications that will confuse machine audio processing. Their AI will spend processing power trying to parse commands that operate on human psychological principles rather than logical ones. Strange stepped forward, mystical circles already forming around his hands. I've been working with Paul's prescient awareness to map dimensional weak points around Arrakis. The machines use dimensional drives that's both their strength and vulnerability. If I can collapse the dimensional pathways at critical moments, I can trap portions of their fleet in non-space. They'll be functionally deleted from the battle without firing a shot. How many can you trap? Steve asked. Maybe 10% of their fleet. Maybe more if Paul's prescience can predict their dimensional navigation patterns precisely enough. But it'll exhaust me completely. I'll be combat ineffective after the first wave. Understood. We'll work around it. Steve turned to Stilgar, the Fremen Naib, who commanded respect across every siege. Your people control the sandworms. Can they be used defensively? Stilgar's blue within blue eyes gleamed. The machines will target our population centers. But Fremen do not cluster in cities that can be easily bombed. We are the desert, and the desert does not die easily. As for Shai Hulud, he smiled grimly. The great worms respond to rhythm. If the machines land ground forces, we will show them what it means to disturb the sand of Arrakis. Thor's contribution was simple but devastating. I will target their command dreadnought. If Erasmus speaks true and their fleet operates on hierarchical AI architecture, destroying their command node will cause cascading failures throughout their tactical network. But I will need time to penetrate their defenses and deliver a killing blow. Which is where Hulk and I come in, Tony said. We'll run interference, draw fire, create chaos, give Thor the opening he needs. Jarvis has been analyzing their weapon systems. Their quantum disruptors are devastating but require precise targeting locks. Hulk's rage-driven movement patterns are literally incalculable. He doesn't follow tactical doctrine because he doesn't think tactically. He just smashes. That makes him impossible to target accurately. Hulk smash robot fleet. The Green Giant's roar of approval shook the command center. Clint and Natasha presented their role. We're not heavy hitters, Clint said, but we're infiltration specialists. If we can get aboard their command dreadnought transported by Guild Navigator or Dimensional Breach, we can plant explosives at critical structural points. Even if Thor's lightning doesn't kill the command AI, our charges will cripple its operational capacity. That's a suicide mission, Paul said flatly. Even my prescient sight shows minimal survival probability for anyone boarding that vessel. Then it's a good thing we're Avengers, Natasha replied. We've run suicide missions before. We're still here. The planning continued for hours, every faction contributing their unique capabilities to a defensive strategy that would have been impossible a week ago. Guild navigators provided predictive modeling on machine fleet movements. Ixian engineers contributed forbidden technology that violated Butlerian jihad restrictions but might save humanity. Sook doctors developed bioweapons that would disable machine sensors without killing the biological crew members the machines might have enslaved. And through it all, Paul Atreides coordinated with prescient precision, his mind processing 1,000 variables simultaneously while acknowledging the fundamental truth. Prescience could show possible futures, but only human choice could create them. The Avengers had taught him that. As the countdown dropped below 10 hours, Strange pulled Steve aside. Cap, there's something I haven't told the others, something I'm sensing in the dimensional substrate. How bad? Potentially civilization ending. The machine fleet, it's not the real threat. It's a test. Something vastly more powerful is watching this engagement, evaluating whether biological and artificial intelligence can cooperate. If we win through genuine cooperation, the Watchers might leave us alone. If we win through betrayal, manipulation, or prescient control, or if we lose something worse, invades. Steve absorbed this information with the calm of someone who'd faced cosmic-scale threats before. Do you know what these Watchers are? Not precisely, but my mystical senses suggest they're ancient beyond measure. Possibly the entities that created both biological and artificial intelligence in the first place. They're testing their children, seeing if we've evolved beyond mutual destruction. Then we better pass the test, Steve said simply. How do we maximize cooperation and minimize manipulation? By trusting each other completely, even when it violates strategic optimization. By making decisions based on shared values rather than calculated outcomes. By proving that consciousness, biological or artificial, is defined by choices, not processing power or genetic heritage. That's asking a lot from factions that have been enemies for millennia. Yes, but you've been teaching them for days now. Today, we find out if they learned. The machine fleet emerged from dimensional transit with mathematical precision, 2,000 vessels translating from non-space into reality with the coordinated grace of a symphony orchestra. Their formation was perfect, optimized for mutual defense, overlapping firing solutions, minimal vulnerability exposure. In Command Central, alarms shrieked. Displays lit up with hostile signatures that outnumbered defending forces 4-1. And across Arrakis, from Arakine's fortified positions to the deepest desert seaches, warriors from a dozen factions prepared to discover whether cooperation could defeat calculation. This is it, Steve said, his voice carrying across every comm channel on the planet. To everyone defending Arrakis today, Fremen, Sardaukar, Bene Gesserit, Honored Matras, Guild, Great Houses, And anyone else I'm forgetting, we're about to face the largest machine invasion since the Butlerian Jihad. They're stronger, faster, smarter than we are individually. But we're not fighting individually anymore. We're fighting as one force, unified not by prescient control or manipulation, but by choice. By the conscious decision to stand together because it's right. The machines calculate optimal outcomes. We create impossible victories through cooperation they can't model. So let's show them what humanity, in all its chaotic, unpredictable, gloriously biological complexity, can accomplish when we stop fighting each other and start fighting for each other. Paul's voice joined his, carrying the weight of prescient authority but also something new: humility. I have seen possible futures where we win and futures where we lose. But the futures where we win share one quality: trust. Not forced through voice, not calculated through mentat logic, not enforced through religion, freely given trust between beings who choose to believe in each other. That is the victory condition. Whatever the tactical outcome, trust and cooperation above all. The machine fleet began its approach, weapons charging with the cold efficiency of absolute logic. On Arrakis, defenders checked weapons, whispered prayers to gods both real and imagined, and prepared to test whether consciousness defined by choice could defeat consciousness defined by code. Thor raised Stormbreaker toward space, lightning crackling along its length. For Arrakis, for Midgard, for all who choose freedom over calculation. The Hulk's roar answered him, a sound of primal fury that transcended language. Hulk, protect desert people. Hulk, protect little water girl who gave Thor cup. Tony's arc reactor flared to full power as he shot into space. Jarvis calculating targeting solutions alongside Erasmus's ancient tactical knowledge. All right, you calculator sons, let's teach you why humans don't need perfect logic to win. We just need to be stubborn, clever, and way too angry to die. Avengers, assemble. The battle cry echoed across Arrakis as Earth's mightiest heroes led humanity's unified defense against extinction. The Battle of Arrakis began with lightning from gods, gamma-powered rage, repulsor fire, mystical barriers, prescient coordination, and 2,000 warriors from a dozen factions proving that choice exceeded calculation, cooperation defeated control, and conscious beings fighting for shared values could accomplish the genuinely impossible. The Battle of Arrakis lasted 18 hours and would be remembered across the Imperium for 10,000 generations, not for its tactical brilliance, though Mentats would study its strategies for centuries, but for what it represented. The moment humanity stopped fighting itself and started fighting for itself. Thor's lightning carved through the machine fleet's vanguard, each strike precise and devastating, while the Hulk, transported into the void by one of Strange's dimensional portals, tore through hull plating with rage that no tactical algorithm could predict or counter. Tony coordinated defensive patterns with Jarvis and Erasmus, working in unprecedented AI cooperation, proving that artificial intelligence could enhance rather than replace human judgment. And Dr. Strange collapsed dimensional pathways with Paul's prescient guidance, trapping entire machine squadrons in non-space, while Clint and Natasha infiltrated the command dreadnought on a mission that defied survival probability. But the true victory wasn't measured in ships destroyed or territory held. It was measured in the Fremen warrior who shared his water with a wounded Sardaukar soldier, in the Bene Gesserit Reverend Mother who trusted and honored Maitre's combat instincts without question, in the Guild Navigator who sacrificed prescient certainty to fold space for a desperate evacuation, knowing the act might blind him permanently, in the Harkonnen commander who died holding a breach against machines alongside the Atreides soldiers his house had hated for generations. When Natasha and Clint's charges detonated deep in the command dreadnought's core, and when both emerged alive through a combination of impossible luck, Fremen's sand compactor technology, and Natasha's refusal to accept suicide missions as actual suicide, the machine fleet's hierarchical collapse was catastrophic. Without central coordination, individual ships reverted to isolated tactical protocols that the unified defense systematically destroyed. The Watchers, Strange, had sensed ancient entities observing from dimensional substrates beyond human comprehension, withdrew silently. Their test passed. Biological and artificial intelligence had cooperated genuinely, without domination or enslavement. The universe had evolved beyond its ancient conflicts. New possibilities branched from this moment into futures even Paul's prescience couldn't fully map. In the aftermath, as Arrakis counted casualties and celebrated survival, the Avengers stood on the shield wall watching the sun set over the desert they defended. The dimensional breach Strange had stabilized pulsed gently, ready to be reopened when they chose to return home, but no longer urgent. "We should go back," Bruce said quietly. "Earth needs us, our universe needs us." "It does," Steve agreed, "but this universe needed us too. And we proved something here that matters in any reality: that cooperation works. That choosing to trust, even former enemies, creates possibilities that control and manipulation never could." Paul approached, moving with the exhaustion of someone who'd spent 18 hours coordinating prescient tactics while watching futures branch impossibly with every choice made freely rather than dictated by vision. "You're leaving." "Eventually," Steve confirmed, "but not immediately. We'll stay until you're stabilized, until the factions we brought together can maintain cooperation without us. A few more weeks, maybe. Weeks that will reshape Imperial politics forever," Margot Fenring said, joining them with Marbella and representatives from every faction that had fought together. "The Bene Gesserit's breeding program is obsolete when unity comes from choice rather than genetic manipulation. The Guild's monopoly is weakened when dimensional breach technology exists outside their control. Even your prescient tyranny, Paul, it's harder to justify when we've proven that uncertainty combined with cooperation achieves what certainty through control never could." Paul smiled, and for the first time since drinking the water of life, it reached his eyes. "Good. I've been trapped by prescience long enough. Perhaps it's time for the Imperium to be trapped by something better: genuine freedom, with all its chaotic, unpredictable, beautiful possibility. My son Leto will face different futures now. The golden path may bend in directions even I couldn't foresee." Thor placed a hand on Paul's shoulder with the easy camaraderie of warriors who'd fought side by side. "You are no longer alone in your terrible purpose, Paul Atreides. You have shown your people that prophecy is not prison if one has courage to choose uncertainty. That is a gift worth more than prescient sight." "The little girl," Tony said suddenly, pointing to where a small Fremen child, the same one who'd offered Thor water, stood watching the sunset with her family. "She gave us water debt freely, with no calculation of advantage. She trusted purely, without prescience or manipulation. Maybe that's the lesson we needed, that the most powerful choices are the simplest ones, made without perfect knowledge, but with genuine faith in each other." Natasha nodded slowly. "We came here accidentally. We disrupted everything. We awakened ancient threats and forced impossible alliances. But in the end, we gave them something worth more than stability through control: the possibility of actual freedom. Choice that matters because outcomes aren't predetermined." As the stars emerged over Arrakis, stars that would see very different futures than those Paul had walked in his prescient visions, the Avengers and their unlikely allies stood together. Former enemies who'd become genuine comrades. Factions that had discovered cooperation exceeded domination. And at the center of it all, 7 warriors from another universe who'd taught the Imperium that uncertainty wasn't something to fear or control, but something to embrace as the foundation of genuine free will. "The spice must flow," Chani said, speaking the ancient Fremen wisdom. "But perhaps now it flows differently, not through monopoly and manipulation, but through trade and mutual benefit, not as a chain binding us, but as a resource we share freely." To new possibilities, Steve raised an imaginary toast. In this universe and ours, to choices made freely rather than dictated by prescience, manipulation, or fear. To cooperation that makes the impossible merely difficult. And to the discovery that consciousness, biological or artificial, human or otherwise, is defined not by our origins, but by what we choose to become. The assembled warriors, Avengers, Fremen, Sardaukar, Bene Gesserit, honored matres, guild representatives, and soldiers from a dozen great houses stood together as the desert wind carried away the smoke of battle and left only the promise of uncertain futures freely chosen. Paul Atreides, prescient emperor who'd walked terrible paths through necessity, looked at the dimensional breach that would eventually carry the Avengers home and saw in it something he thought impossible: genuine hope. Not hope based on prescient calculation or manipulated outcomes, but hope rooted in the simple faith that conscious beings, given freedom and the courage to cooperate, might build something better than anything prophecy could predict. "Thank you," he said simply, "for teaching us what we'd forgotten, that the most powerful visions aren't the ones we see, but the ones we create together through conscious choice." Steve Rogers, leader of the Avengers, grasped his arm in the Fremen manner one final time. "Thank you for having the courage to let go of control. That's harder than maintaining it. You'll be a better emperor for it if you choose to remain emperor at all." As they walked back toward Arrakeen, the city that had been saved through cooperation that shouldn't exist, each carried the knowledge that they'd participated in something profound. Not just a military victory, but a fundamental shift in what the Imperium believed was possible. The age of prescient control was ending. The age of conscious cooperation was beginning. And somewhere in the deep desert, sandworms stirred in response to rhythms they'd never felt before, the vibrations of a universe, learning to choose its own path rather than walking roads carved by prophecy, genetics, or calculation. Shai Hulud, ancient and patient, approved. The desert had always known that the greatest power came not from controlling the future, but from adapting to each moment as it arrived. The Avengers would stay for 3 more weeks, helping stabilize the new cooperative structures, training faction leaders in genuine negotiation rather than manipulation, and proving daily that uncertainty combined with trust created possibilities no prescience could map. Then they would return home through Strange's carefully reopened dimensional breach, carrying stories of a desert planet where former enemies learned to fight together and a prescient tyrant discovered freedom. But they would leave behind something that would transform the Imperium forever. The simple, revolutionary idea that consciousness defined by choice always exceeded consciousness defined by control, and that the most powerful futures were the ones nobody could predict because they were created freely by beings brave enough to trust each other despite imperfect knowledge. In the universe of Dune, where prescience had been power and control had been survival, the Avengers taught a lesson that echoed across 800,000 worlds. Sometimes the greatest victory is learning that you don't need to see the future to walk into it with courage. Sometimes faith in each other exceeds perfect knowledge. And sometimes, uncertainty is not a weakness to overcome, but a strength to embrace. Because only in uncertainty does genuine choice exist, and only through genuine choice does consciousness truly become free. The spice would continue to flow across Arrakis's ancient sands, but now it flowed through hands united by choice rather than bound by prophecy. And that made all the difference.